Hey, I'm trying to live until I die. Come connect, you know it's a lewd state of mind. Yeah, yeah, talking traveling. If you wanna fly, fitness and finance, living a better life, keep it raw, no filter, living with no limit. Thank you for tuning in. Come on, let's get it.
Lads,
How you doing?
welcome to Lured State of Mind. Thank you very much for making the trip over the ditch.
Our pleasure to be here.
Do you want to introduce yourselves to our listeners and our viewers?
Go, Jared.
Come on.
Well, I'm Jared MacDonald. I hail from the Waikato in New Zealand, which is just south of Auckland, is the region. Mm-hmm. I'm in a beautiful city called Hamilton, based on a river. Hamilton's about under 200,000 people, so it's really just a little town. It's the home of Fonterra, so anyone who's drunken or eaten any of our amazing dairy products in New Zealand,
That's where it's from.
chances are it's come out of the Waikato there. And Fonterra is our largest company. They are a major infrastructure in Hamilton City. Their head office is there. There's a lot of dairy farms there. I grew up not on a farm, but my best friend had a farm, and I spent many weekends and school holidays
Happy
on a
days,
dairy
mate.
farm, mate. It was great.
Happy days. So what do you do in New Zealand and Hamilton?
So I am currently, I run a barbecue restaurant, a
Called?
Texas barbecue restaurant called Texas Pete's Barbecue.
Google that, everybody.
Yeah, look, I fell in love with barbecuing about a decade ago, and just am a qualified chef. So just have sort of, it's really, I know the word passion gets thrown around a lot, and I was never really a believer. I did marketing, so I know about the hype of passion and all the rest of it. But I think for your listeners, some of them might be able to relate to this, that when you truly find your passion, it literally takes over your whole life.
And so it should.
And some people, if you think about someone who's a gambler, they spend a lot of time feeding that need to gamble. Mm-hmm. When a passion is just a nice way of saying I'm addicted to barbecuing, and it consumes my whole life.
Fantastic.
So weekends, I work very long hours willingly. I just love it. I love barbecue. So I'm a barbecuer.
What's your team name?
My team name, so what you're referring to there is the competition barbecue scene.
Yep. We'll delve into that a little bit later on.
And my team name is More Better Barbecue, and it's obviously a grammatical nightmare, but there's a story behind that maybe I could share with you later.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
So I'm married with, but actually married 20 years, if you can believe that. I'm in my mid-40s. Married 20 years, 3 boys aged 13, 10 and 5. Hopefully no more kids on the way. I actually only wanted 2, but 3's good. And love living in New Zealand, love being from New Zealand, but also just, I have lived in Australia. I lived in Sydney from 1998 to 2000. I was there for the big 2000 Olympic Games and all that. And then I stayed away from Australia because Sydney is a rat race.
It is indeed.
And it kind of put me off big city living. And then it's really been a blessing to be involved in barbecue and get to re-explore Australia as a...
You got to love Melbourne, though, don't you? Don't you love coming back here?
Oh, yeah.
Hey?
That's great.
Look, I don't mind Melbourne. Melbourne rates on my list. I've never been to Adelaide or Perth, but as I said,
don't bother.
Sydney extensively, Melbourne. But I went to Brisbane last year for the first time. I've never had any need to go to Queensland.
Did you get swamp ass?
I'll tell you what, man.
You got locked down.
Oh, you got stuck over there during COVID.
But I'll tell you, Brisbane is the only place in Australia that I've felt the desire to want to move here. Because obviously everyone knows Kiwis all come over here and start scaffolding companies. That's fine.
Is that what they do?
On the GC.
But I went to Brisbane. I've got whānau up there. And, man, it's an amazing place. Probably a lot like New Zealand in terms of that work-life outdoor balance.
Yeah.
And I just think Brisbane's amazing. So if
got
I was
that
to move
climate
to
like
Australia...
Hamilton.
No, it's... yeah, she's pretty... I was there I think in the winter, and maybe that's why I liked it so much.
Yeah, you would have. Don't go in there in the summer. It's terrible.
I've heard it's
Well,
horrible.
even the Kiwis, you can spot the Kiwis in winter in Queensland, can't you? They're still walking around in bloody jandals and singlets.
Exactly. Hey, enough for you for the moment.
Yeah.
I want to know about you. Come on, Brendan. Who are you?
Oh, yeah, Brendan from Hawke's Bay.
Brendan and Brendan.
Brendan from Brendan Resma.
North Island, east coast of the North Island in NZ. So haven't got quite the culinary background as what Jared has, but I sort of got into competition barbecue as a bit of a stress release, just a bit of a hobby in that. So
Look, everybody knows that when you get into your mid-40s, you've got to make a choice. There's a sort of like a path in the road. You either get into World War II history or smoking meat slow and slow.
Well, look, I've got to stop you right there and explain to our listeners and viewers that I'm sitting opposite New Zealand and Australasian and even world barbecue champions. Is that correct? You've been New Zealand barbecue champion. You've been New Zealand barbecue champion. You've been world champion.
Yeah, I've been
Stock,
very
the
blessed. Very
reason
blessed.
why you guys are here, there's two reasons. Is A, we don't do Zoom podcasts at Lloyd's State of Mind. It's all about being here and immersing yourself and experiencing it.
Yeah.
And two, you're here for Meat Stock Melbourne, which is on this weekend.
Yeah.
So if there's any ladies listening to this, don't switch off. Don't think, oh, blokes and barbecue and meat and all the rest of it, because there's a lot of stuff that everybody can learn. And, of course, we're going to be talking about family and food further on down the line. And this involves everybody. It's not just blokes cooking meat, standing around a barbecue. And you guys
It is
can-
that, but it's
it is, but it is.
philosophy.
Exactly. Now,
Barbecue's a lifestyle choice. It's not just staring at a snag on the grill. Any competitive endeavour takes a philosophical approach, and we're in the deep end, I suppose. And I think we've learnt as normal people, regular folk, we've learnt a lot of lessons doing competitive barbecue that we apply to our life approach. And I think that there is some wisdom that we've learnt along the way that we'd be more than happy to
for sure.
share. And I think for the ladies, the psychology of understanding a man's need to be productive is tied up in all this. And I think it's a opportunity to learn how a male thinks.
Yeah, as I said, don't switch off.
yeah, I mean,
Don't
there's
switch off.
plenty of ladies are getting involved, now too, which is fantastic. I mean, don't necessarily see it as a male female sort of thing. It's just about whoever's interested in cooking over fire and just involved in that process and ritual. It's sort of quite, especially competition barbecue, it's quite a process-driven sort of environment, really. You've sort of got to do one step before the next step, so it's quite methodical. So
Yeah.
that's probably why I could never get into sort of catering like Jared does. That would just do my head in, because I think once you're in competition mindset, you're just so invested. It's just so full on for such a short period of time.
Yeah.
I've just got to go get out of it and go do something else. So
Well, before we
It's
go
pretty
any
intense, yeah.
before we go any further, obviously our new sponsor Buckfast.
oh, absolutely, that's great.
You know,
product.
have you heard about Buckfast?
No.
It's a tonic wine. It's supplied in Australasia by our good friends at Rob and Joe at Chapel Street Cellars. So they've come on board with us. So I say cheers to Buckfast and cheers to
Buckfast.
to the ladies and everybody else in the barbecue community, and good luck for everybody this weekend.
The
Good-
aroma coming off that is amazing.
Good
by
luck
the way.
to. Do you want to?
No, I'm good. I'll have a little sniff of that.
It's,
I can smell it. Like I'm a meter away from it.
It's not offensive. It's got like it's like a caffeinated sort of type.
It's
Has it
got a lot.
caffeine in it.
It's
very
loaded
nice.
with caffeine.
But it's quite a reasonable low percentage,
That's
really. Isn't it like
beautiful.
12, 13 or something?
No, I think it's about 14.
Oh, is
You
it?
know,
Yeah,
look,
it's
I should
like
have
wine.
I should have a sheet on it, considering that they are a sponsor. But we'll work on that.
It's one of those drinks where you sort of, if you're a little bit tired from the night before, you just want to start off on something,
Yep.
have a couple of glasses of that,
Yep.
and then you can just sort of carry on into the night.
Yeah, there's actually a phrase that goes with it, but we won't repeat it.
What is it?
It's just,
I haven't heard it.
Sounds
Is it on
like.
the bottle?
Well,
I haven't heard it either.
We're
But
probably
I can
gonna have-
imagine it
Does
sounds
it rhyme
like
with Buckfast?
well, probably yeah, exactly. You do the math. You do
Okay,
the math
rightio.
on that. You do the math.
Okay,
Anyway,
rightio.
we've got the sponsor stuff out of the way. Let's get down in the nitty gritty. As I said, welcome again, guys. I really appreciate you making the time to come in. What do you think about the studios?
It's fantastic.
What do you think about it? Lloyd's State of Mind.
It's just so crisp and clean and modern. very.
Well, it's brand spanking new. So,
Yeah, I know, but it's sort of got that. It's got that sort of timeless sort of elegance to it.
Oh.
I mean, downstairs, I just love that street scene of Osaka. Was it downtown
Yes.
Osaka?
Yep.
I love that, and especially with that signage on the wall there too. I mean, I've sort of been to Tokyo, and I could just picture it.
Well, that's
takes
what
me right back to those little laneways and the streets of Tokyo.
me and Mav have just come back from
Yeah.
there, and I love everything about it. The food, the people, the culture.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. It's crazy good, and I love it.
It's just insane. I mean, I think a lot of people can sort of take a lesson by going to Tokyo and just how to act properly. Just how to have manners.
Exactly. Well, as we've said on the show before, there's one thing that I hate is that people that go to other countries and don't respect the locals, and they go and just be dicks, and it's really disappointing because people jump on a plane and they think, oh, I'm going somewhere, it's not home, I can act like an idiot. No respect, don't even learn the basics. But anyway, that's my gripe. People have heard, they know about that.
You been to Japan?
No.
China? You spent a
Japan.
bit of time in Japan, China, eh?
I've lived in Shanghai for 4 years. That was an eye-opener.
Wow. Have you gotten over your lung cancer?
No,
The
no.
smog. When were you there?
I was there from probably about, I think, 2004. We would have moved over there till we came back 2008, I think, or 2009.
The Olympics were 2008,
Yep,
weren't they?
we watched the Olympics.
Yep.
Well, we were in Shanghai. The Olympics obviously were in Beijing, but she's a big city. At the time we lived there, it was the most populous place on earth. So, 2020, I think there was about 22 million people while we were there in Shanghai.
We went there. I went there with the V8 supercars in 2006, and one of the stats that was amazing was that 11% of the world's cranes were in either Shanghai or Beijing at that point.
It's incredible, yeah.
Unbelievable stat. And the one thing that got me was just the smog, and we didn't see the sun for the 5 days that we were there.
Far out.
It was weird, but anyway.
Yeah, I suppose when you're living I think you adjust to that very quickly, and when you're living on the surface of the place, because you tend to see the smog at the elevation, like of the sightseeing platforms and so on. When you're living on the surface level, you don't tend to notice the smog. But there are some very unique things about the Chinese culture, but also living in a city of that many people.
Yeah.
And we're kind of like, me and my wife went over there after we graduated just to do a OE, because the UK sounded boring. So we'd been up to Hong Kong a few times and sort of liked Hong Kong. And then we moved to Shanghai. We knew one person out of the 22 million. Couldn't speak any Chinese. I mean, I think I could count to 10. And
As long as you can say hello and goodbye.
No, I can tell you,
Yeah.
when we hopped off the taxi cab, whatever, and we didn't, man, it was, well, I felt the true depth of culture shock that one day. I thought we'd made a big mistake, and the next day I was fine, and we ended up staying for 4 years. And
So how did you get on with working there? Were you in software at that stage? Were you software
no,
developing?
I'd done, me and my wife had done a law degree, and I'd done a marketing degree.
Oh, so Michelle done a law degree?
Yeah, she's
wow.
a lot of people, like I'm,
I didn't know
you
that.
know, I'm the front man for the family, I suppose, because I'm out there, and you're gonna hear what I think, whether you ask to know or not. And my wife is understated and tends to be overshadowed by my personality, and is happy to do that. But she's super intelligent.
Oh, she's a very
She's
quiet
got,
achiever. I mean, especially with her
yeah.
running for the council.
Yeah, she's got 2 degrees, one of them law. She's been admitted to the bar. She's done a master's in law, management, and she's very accomplished academically.
Did not know that.
Yeah.
I love that line. I did not know that.
Yeah.
We need to make a
she's-
T-shirt.
She's understated, so.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
yeah, that's awesome.
Hey, we said the reason why you guys were here was meat stock this weekend, competition barbecuing. Can you give us an insight into exactly how the weekend plays out for you guys?
We have 2 very different personalities, me and Brendan. We're both very accomplished at competition barbecue, at least in our region. And I suppose you would say we're 2 big fish in a small-ish pond. Competition barbecue started in New Zealand in 2017, I believe, or was it 16?
Yeah, 17, yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
all very fresh,
It's
isn't
all
it?
very
Yeah.
fresh.
Yeah.
And But in America, in the United States of America, they've been doing it for generations. I've met people who've been barbecuing for 50, 60 years. So it's their. We call it a sport because we like to think of ourselves as athletes. But I think it is a stretch. But I think it's more than a hobby, but less than a sport.
Oh, going back to that athlete part, I mean, I sort of, did a few triathlons and that back in the day and Ironmans and stuff. And I mean, that preparation, like coming into a weekend, I find it very, that methodical. Like, you sort of, you're tapering off before a triathlon or an Ironman or something. And I can sort of, you've got your steps of preparation, leading up to a meat stock. I mean, meat stock's probably one of the biggest competitions in Australasia. Stage-wise, I mean, everybody wants to win a meat stock and that. So.
Well, as you say, you set yourself up for success, don't you?
You do.
So
It's
you
all
make
in the preparation.
Sure,
So
exactly.
absolutely. So it's all. I'm very sort of methodical, and my preparation is just down to the last, dot and cross to the T and that. So
And that's
where
how
Jared's a
that's
little
how you
bit
get
more,
results.
bit more relaxed, I would sort of say. You just get too
I
busy.
think we both take it very seriously, obviously, but I think it's that I'm far more adaptive because I cook in a team. So we cook in. So competitive barbecue is alive and well in Australia. They have over 100 teams that cook here in Australia, mostly the Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne, with the bulk of teams being in Melbourne. They're probably disproportionately represented.
Do you reckon? I reckon it's pretty 50-50.
Melbourne, Sydney, definitely the most. Some in Queensland, a good number, and some really phenomenally good teams in Queensland, Bluebird, and of course Awesome Ugly. But there's some in Adelaide too, but it's disproportionately more competitive teams in Sydney and Melbourne. And obviously Melbourne are the cuisine capital of the region.
Definitely. Yeah.
And so there's a greater emphasis, I suppose, on food and cooking and all of that. So we're here for, I think this would be, in my estimation, this must be the 4th Meat Stock Melbourne.
I think this is the 5th because
It could be the 5th.
2018 was the
No,
third.
2017 we
was it?
came over and had a look. Remember
Oh,
that?
but you competed for
Yeah,
the first one.
2018. Yeah. So I think we did
you're
all-
probably right. This probably
Yeah.
could be the 5th. Well, obviously, I don't know if you
'Cause
count the pre-COVID one because I remember COVID-19 was in 2020 is where it really got teeth. And I remember leaving Auckland Airport. I was listening to the radio, walking across the parking lot at the terminal, and they declared the World Health Organization, breaking news, we've declared the COVID-19 pandemic a pandemic. And I remember hopping on a plane coming over thinking, oh, well, whatever, I'm going to cook my meat. And
Yeah.
and
Everybody was
by
very
Sunday, I was trying to get a flight home.
Yeah,
I was
everybody was-
desperate to get a flight home.
Blase. So our story of that particular day, we were all packed up, ready to bump in on Friday morning, and from our house we drove past the Grand Prix, which was on the same weekend.
That's right.
And we're looking at all the crowds waiting to get in, and we're listening on the radio about all the shit that's going down, and we go, yeah, whatever. And then as soon as we heard that the Grand Prix had been cancelled, we knew the writing was on the wall, and it was only a couple of hours later that Meat Stock pulled the pin. I mean, they had to do what they had to do, and that was what they had to do at the time.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
in hindsight, it was probably a knee-jerk reaction.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Knowing what we know.
You've got to remember, though, at the point, I remember we went to the meeting when they were deciding to cancel Meat Stock. And for those who have never been to Meat Stock, the context is it's about I think they have something like 6,000 to 8,000 people show up to it. It's a meat festival. There's live music. There's live butchering, cooking of barbecue.
Barber Wars.
There's all kinds of.
craft brews.
It's really a all things barbecue and loosely related event. And
it's sold out again.
yeah, they sell
Yeah,
they
sell
sell
out
out
both
almost
days.
every
Yeah.
year. If you haven't been and you're into it's not just a meat fest, but obviously meat is a significant proportion of what gets cooked on a
Oh,
barbecue.
I forgot to mention, if you're vegetarian and you can manage to get enough strength up to turn the volume off, do so now.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, also
No,
saying
no,
that too,
not at all.
there's lots of vegetarian options there
Is
too.
there?
So I think it's not so much a meat thing. I mean, it's almost like cooking, having something, cooked over charcoal or wood. and that too. And I mean that flavour and that depth of flavour, goes through veggies and.
Yeah. We're
We're
not a meat festival. We're a barbecue
It's
festival.
like a barbecue
Yeah.
festival. So I mean there's just so many products. I mean every year or every meat stock, there's something different that I've sort of never thought of barbecuing that gets done. So it's sort of expanding my horizons quite a bit too. And that's why I just love coming to especially the Melbourne and Sydney ones. And that there's just over here everybody's just pushing the boundaries of what barbecue is. So I mean, I think Jay Beaumont, who runs the meat stock festivals, just does a great job of getting lots of different vendors and lots of different different activities and that on board too. So I mean, they're doing bull riding this year too.
Yeah.
So
Look, it's
which
just
is
grown and
gonna be
grown year
fantastic.
after year,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
fantastic. It's a fantastic event.
Yeah.
And if you haven't gone,
Oh yeah, absolutely do it. Yeah.
seek it out, check it out. There's a lot of information on their website, meatstock.com. .au.
Yeah.
So as we were talking about earlier on about preparation and what to expect this weekend, judging's obviously a big part of it.
Yeah, so for the listener or the viewer who's still unsure as to what we do, we basically
give 'em
run
a
a
run.
contest where we cook on what we call a solid fuel barbecue. So that eliminates anything that's using liquefied gas or anything like that. So we're talking about pellets, we're talking about briquettes, charcoal, and firewood is what we talk about when we talk about cooking on our barbecue. And so Meat Stock is a festival with a barbecue contest as part of that. We run these contests up and down New Zealand and Australia and, in fact, all over the world all year. But this would be like a significant event on the calendar in terms of desirability to do well. From a points perspective, we have the event sanctioned by the Australasian Barbecue Alliance, and that spans both New Zealand and Australia. And I believe they're now doing some stuff in South America with the alliance. And what they do basically is they're an independent body that basically oversee the judging and implement the rules and decide exactly what the rules are. And an event like Meat Stock, they hire that organisation in to come and officiate the contest.
Yep.
And then they publish the rules online. And guys like us who have cooked these contests many times, we're very familiar with what is and isn't allowed. So we're restricted in terms of what we can cook, how we can cook it, when we can start cooking it, and so on and so forth. And everybody starts effectively from the same place. And then at a certain time, the event will usually start on the Friday night. The cooks will have a meeting and they open a cooking window, and then we turn in barbecued products, not just meat, over Saturday and then Sunday, which get judged and overseen by the Australasian Barbecue Alliance.
So there's two different competitions, one that runs on Saturday and one that runs on Sunday. Is that correct?
That's at Meat Stock. There is.
Yeah.
At Meat Stock on Saturday, they're cooking under what they call the Steak Cook-Off Association out of Fort Worth, Texas. And that's a really loose cooking contest. What I mean by loose is it's really open in terms of what you can cook. They're less restrictive, and that caters to the more creative side of cooking.
Yeah.
And also isn't limited by cooking appliance. So you can deep fry, you can do things where you cook on really anything. Mm-hmm. And you can cook, they'll have a category like they might do, I don't know.
I think they do like chicken wings, burger, some sort of, what you sort of cook at home.
Dessert as well too.
Do desserts.
can do
They'll
dessert,
even do like a promoter's challenge where they might give you a bottle of beer and say you have to use that somewhere. So you could use it like a beer batter, or you could make a whatever.
Yeah.
The core category in SCA is the steak category, which is sort of like the big category. That's I think it's $1,000 cash for the prize for that one usually.
Yeah.
So everybody get that, and they provide the steak as part of entering that, so that everybody's effectively cooking from the same cut, timeline, blah blah blah. So I can't go buy some high end Wagyu from Japan and come in and clean everyone up with it.
And what's the cut of meat that they're giving you for steak?
Yeah, it's Scotch fillet, what we
Yep.
call in the South in the South Pacific is Scotch fillet, or it's ribeye in the US.
Okay.
Yeah, which is like the king of steaks, right?
So for anybody listening at home, if they're going out to buy some steak, that's if they want the best of the best, that's what they're looking for. Ribeye.
Yeah.
I think it
Scotch
depends,
fillet.
eh? 'Cause
Yeah, I mean-
it depends what you want. It's like there's different tastes and textures to every cut. But if you're after just an honest steak where you're going to please 95% of people, a ribeye the way to go, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, with the competition, I mean, I love like a strip loin sort of porterhouse type.
I'm a skirt
type
guy
steak. You're
myself.
skirt, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, some of those cheaper type cuts of steak, you can sort of hot and fast it. You can sort of get something done in 20 minutes, cut it up, put it in tacos and that. So, if you're coming home at 5 o'clock, you can have something sort of cooked on the charcoal by 5:45, 6 o'clock.
So that theory of good in, good out, does that apply?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So the quality of meat that you buy, if you're buying the best of the best, you're going to get the end result's going to be.
But I mean, you can also get a shitty cut of steak. Give it a bit of love, and it just comes out amazing. So
Okay. If you
Yeah,
know
I
what
think
you're
it's
doing,
about-
if you know what you're doing.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah.
like anything, like any endeavour. I can spend an infinite amount of money on whatever, choose your product.
Yeah.
But if I don't know how to look after that product, I can buy the most expensive sport car in the world, but if I can't drive a car very well, it's going to be a wasted
Yeah.
endeavour, right?
Yeah, you're not going to get the enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, and while I don't know if we're talking about the Formula One, who's the famous Formula One guy? Schumacher. If Schumacher, you gave him a Mini, a piece of crap, Ford Escort, 1980 Ford Escort.
Oh, he's
I'm sure
Kiwiana right
probably
there.
still drive the
Yeah.
ass out of it.
he could drive the arse out of it, even though it's not by today's standards up
Yeah.
to scratch. Whereas if you gave him a Formula One car, obviously he can drive it a lot better. So the
Not at the
limiting
moment, though.
factor.
No, unfortunately, he's probably not in a position to do that.
No,
anymore.
but yeah. That's probably a poor choice of example. But my point is if you master a few skills on how to cook on live fire, one you'll get a far better result in terms of just whatever you can afford to buy. And
Yeah.
if that's Coles or Countdown, as we call it in New Zealand, Coles steak, then that's what it is.
sure.
It's what you can afford. There's there's no. People have limited means, and if that's what you got, then that's what you got. But you may as well, given that it was a sentient being, you may as well learn how to cook it the best it possibly can be and enjoy that
Well,
gift of that meat.
I want to come back to that later on because steak's a big thing for me, and I want our listeners to understand.
Get a few tips.
Exactly. We're going to have the top 5 for steaks.
Only 5.
Well, if there's more, there's more. We're going to draw it out of you. So, so the Saturday you said that the steak competition or the steak cook is the most important or the most.
It's the jewel in the crown, basically.
Yep.
So part of that process with the steak cooking, you actually have to go and choose your own steak too. So you pick a number. So there might be 50 steak cooks, and you basically get drawn out a number. So that's between, say, 1 and 50. And then you basically line up, and you've actually, part of that process, you've got to go and pick your steak. So you can say a ribeye steak, but I mean, a ribeye steak goes from the chuck end to the flank end, and there's probably, 15 to 17 steaks out of a cube roll or out of a whole ribeye roll. So, part of that, I mean, the judges are only going to eat one part of that steak called the spinalis, which is like the curved bottom muscle at the bottom of the steak.
On the chuck end.
It goes right through, but I mean,
it's
it
bigger
tapers
on
off.
the
Hey, Mav, can you do me a favour? Can you just search up a steak diagram for us while we're having a chat, so that we can show our viewers exactly what we're talking about?
I think I've got one cut up on the old Facebook
Yeah, I think
page.
if they've got if he's got a diagram, he'll do some searching for it. That's
No worries.
look, if you need anything searched up, that's what Mav's for. That's his job. But yeah, sorry to get back to what you were talking about with regards to what the judges are going to taste.
Yeah, so they're basically judging, they're going to be tasting the spinalis part. So they're basically, if you've got 5 judges or 6 judges, they'll be cutting like a tiny section of that into 6, and they'll be tasting that. And then they cut the basically the steak in half, and it gets judged on doneness. So I think it's...
So just explain doneness
So
to us.
doneness-
Just Mav's searching
here
that
we
up. Mav, just search up ribeye steak, and that'll bring up a good diagram of what
you
we're
go.
talking about. When we're talking about SCA, they only cook ribeyes, so
Cool.
that'll help the viewer to understand what we're actually talking about there.
Yeah, so you basically get judged on the doneness. So the doneness, they require you to cook it to a medium. So you've obviously
That's
got
perfect. That
your
one there
rare,
that you're
medium
on.
rare.
That third one in, mate. That'll
Well
be a great
done.
one.
Yeah. So,
You just carry on there, Jared.
Yeah, I'm just helping them find a good picture because I think people will be intrigued.
Oh, there we go.
Most people go through the store
Yeah.
and they don't know what they're looking at, and they
Is
don't
that-
want to sound stupid.
is
by
that the
asking.
one that he's talking about?
Yeah. So if you go down to that bottom right one, next one over. Yep, that one. Click on that.
See if we can full screen that.
So
you
if you
full
put the
screen
arrow
that,
on
mate?
that top part, yeah, there we go.
There we go. Hold
So
on a sec.
that strip around the top
Yep.
there, that says cap. That's actually the ribeye cap. Is actually the
spinalis.
spinalis. That's the muscle that he's talking about.
So basically in half there where you've got the cursor, they'll basically cut it in half through there and then check your doneness. So they require it to be cooked to medium, which is about an internal temperature of about 140 Fahrenheit. So you've basically got to stop your cooking at about 135 because it's going to carry over.
Yep.
So once you start heating meat, it still keeps on carrying over cooking.
So,
So there's some hardcore terminology in there, Brendan,
Oh,
that I
it
think
is,
most people
yeah.
would be lost by now. But what he's talking about there is that the old way that probably most people heard where you flip a steak once and all that, it's all been debunked. And the best way to judge doneness of a steak is to use a thermal internal
Instant read thermometer.
instant read thermometer, which is basically a
probe.
a probe, a needle-looking thing that you insert into whatever you're cooking,
Should
and
have
it's
actually
not just for
brought
meat.
something, shouldn't
And it will give you the internal temperature of that product, whether it's a chicken or a turkey or whatever, or hot oil. You can use it for boiling eggs, all kinds of things.
It's
What are
probably
they-
one of the most important single
What are
bits of
those?
instrument you can
Yeah, what are
have in your
those?
kit.
What's the brand of that?
The Pure Q.
Yeah,
Mav, can
I
you
use
search-
Thermopune actually. It's much,
Can you
much more reliable.
Pure Google search Pure Q and just bring one of those up for our viewers as
I
well.
think that's a hashtag sponsored post, but
No, it's not
but
anymore.
I'll tell you what.
Sorry,
for
Derek.
for our viewers, number one tip for this podcast is to get yourself an instant read thermometer.
Yeah.
You can buy them for next to nothing from like a hardware store. We won't name the big green one or the big orange one, but
Get some
you can,
images
you can
going,
buy
mate.
them there. And the key is just whatever you buy,
Oh, that's
it's
not it.
proportionately more reliable
Actually,
the
the
more you
letter
pay.
Q, if you just, instead of KUW, just
Oh
go Q.
yeah. Sure.
Yeah, that's it.
So that's what
There
we're
we go.
talking about there. One of those.
Bring
is
one,
nice.
bring one of those up, mates, just so our viewers can see.
Well,
And
that's
I bought my wife one of these probably, I don't know, a few years ago, and it's one of the most used tools in the kitchen because, you know, if you want to boil eggs, if you want to know whether
What-
your chicken's cooked,
It's food safety. It's
yeah.
about food safety, isn't
sure,
it? So-
especially with chicken too. I mean, most
Yeah.
people, you know, cook the shit out of chicken, and it goes all dry and horrible and that. But I mean,
Yeah.
if you know where you're cooking your chicken to, sort of 165.
Okay,
you know, you'll
you
just
got to
get-
stop talking in Fahrenheit too, bro. These Australian listeners are going to be like, "What's he talking about?"
No, so me learning barbecue, which we'll go into again later on. I started learning it, and I'm more comfortable with that, with the Fahrenheit than I
Okay,
am.
I guess for me, I'm a big advocate of the metric system.
Of course, because you're from the Queen's country.
Yeah, and we just should be using it. But look, what Brendan's talking about for the listener is he's talking in Fahrenheit. Now we tend to use Fahrenheit because this is a American cuisine. Just like when we cook pasta, we talk in Italian, you know, or if we do
Al
French
dente.
cooking, we have a lot of French terminology in food. So we're just using the language of the original form of, I guess, of cooking, and he's talking Fahrenheit numbers. Because I work in commercial food service, we have to log everything in terms of Celsius. Or is it centigrade? Yeah, whatever it is, Celsius, yeah.
Yeah.
So I tend to use C's. So what he's talking about is when he says 135, he's meaning 135 degrees Fahrenheit internal, which for the listener is probably about 56 or 57 degrees top of my head. So, but what we're saying is that don't just look at a steak on the barbie and poke it with the tongs and go, I wonder if it's medium rare. Medium rare doneness on a steak is a internal temperature measurement, just like a meter is 1,000 millimeters.
Yep.
Or
Hey, Mav, can you also bring up a diagram of steak doneness? There's a couple of things on and it'll show you the difference in the colour and the texture of the meat, just so our viewers can get an idea. Because as you say, so fundamentally, cooking is about temperature and time. Correct?
No, doneness, yes, what you're saying is correct. Temperature and time for doneness.
Third
Cooking
one
is
in.
about aroma, it's about texture,
Yep.
it's about taste.
Yeah.
But what we know, just from this diagram, is we know that if I cook a beef steak to 120, that's a bit, medium rare, 135 degrees, which I believe is about 57, we know that every time it will be medium rare. We know that. Scientifically, we know.
Yep.
It doesn't matter whether you've got a hot barbecue, a cold barbecue, an oven, a grill, whether you're doing it sous vide. We know that if you hit that temperature, it will be medium rare every time. So if you want to be a barbecue hero in your own neighbourhood,
Yep.
do yourself a favour, buy an internal read thermometer and start to learn about doneness and internal temperatures. Now, lamb we find is better about 132, a little bit lower temperature. Like 135 for lamb might be a little bit more on the medium side than the medium rare or the rare side. So you have to learn the different nuances of different poultries, different meat products. And obviously poultry is the big one that everyone's afraid of. Some in our history, we had processing plants that weren't as well run, I guess, maybe scientifically orientated.
You mean from a hygiene sort of point of
Yeah,
view?
so
the
we had
processing side of it.
Yeah, we had some outbreaks of things like salmonella and things like that. That's largely gone now. Like I'll almost be certain that if you got fresh chicken and ate it raw, you wouldn't get sick.
Well, I mean, in Japan, they've got a
Yeah.
chicken over there. You can have it pretty much raw, sashimi.
Now,
chicken.
I'm not advising the viewer or anyone, you Brendan, to go home and eat raw chicken. That's not what I'm saying.
But in
What I'm
Japan,
saying-
they've got like a breed of chicken where you can actually do that because they haven't got salmonella.
Well, the key is that our mothers, when they cooked the chicken, they were so afraid of this bacteria that they tended to cook it till it was beef jerky. So,
they
or
used to-
chicken jerky.
Or they used to
pork
boil
jerky.
the shit out
Yeah,
of it.
that's right.
Yeah.
So we now in 2023 we know that you don't have to do that. We know that you have to just reach an internal temperature, rapidly cooking something. And when we talk rapidly, we're talking in under 2 hours. We want the product to reach this temperature that we know will kill bacteria. For beef, it's chicken is the one that's problematic because the bacteria that cause foodborne illness in chicken are completely through the muscle. That's the difference between poultry, avian, and beef, is that the bacteria in chicken goes completely through the muscle.
Wow.
On a cow, the bacteria sits on the outside of the muscle where it's been contaminated by air or surfaces
Yeah.
or touching it or whatever. So on a steak, we can eat them rare, we can eat them blue because we sear the outside just to kill that surface bacteria.
Yeah.
And the bacteria isn't completely through the primal muscle.
While we're talking about that, can you explain to me or explain to our listeners and viewers about aged beef, aged steak, as opposed to what you're buying fresh and cooking? I know obviously it's a completely different process, but
Yeah.
but you're aging it and you're basically keeping it in a contained environment at a certain temperature. Is there not bacteria growing? How does this meat not become just a festering blob of shit?
Well, most when you buy a muscle of beef, for example, most people dry age beef. I have seen other cuts, but beef's the key one. When you buy it from the plant, and Australia has, I have sampled beef from all over the world, and Japanese beef is amazing, but it is also very specialised. I believe that the best beef in the world is coming out of Australia.
Really?
And when I say that, I mean in terms of the way they raise it, the genetics, the processing. As a package deal, the beef coming out of Australia is the best, hands down.
It's just the yield of it too. It just they just get so much yield out of it.
I
too.
think it's a combination of just the genetics are great now in Australia. You've focused on the genetics for a long time. You've got good processing plants that are separating out and grading meat products. You've
so
got some
consistent
really
too.
great, grass-fed programs like Tasmania and stuff where they get a lot of pasture. You've got some amazing feed production, from feedlots up in like Queensland. We're able to grain finish beef if you want it that way.
Well, see, that's a whole different thing as well, too. Grain versus grass. What are the benefits, the downsides, the upsides, the difference between those two for our listeners?
Well, you need to find a good butcher that's got a good
Good
variety of
selection.
those cuts too.
It's all,
so
I think it all comes back to health and perceived well-being. Taste and perceived health benefit. So the hardcore organic people will eat grass-fed only.
Yep.
And a lot of my experience in America is that the drive to have grass-fed beef is because their food over there is manufactured. I mean, they manufacture food. They don't grow food. They don't. It's manufactured. It comes in a packet. It's massively manufactured. So there's this sort of, with the rise of companies like Whole Foods, they're trying to find a more natural product, and so they go, let's buy this grass-fed beef from New Zealand or Australia. They want it as unmolested by industry as possible. Unfortunately, they tar other industries with the same brush in terms of, like Australia. I believe that the programs that you run here in Australia are world leading, and I wish, like, this is not to diminish from New Zealand, but we're a little bit behind in terms of the grading and processing side. We've got really good genetics, we've got amazing grass-fed beef, but if you want grain finished, we don't have the grain production. We also don't have the grading at the plant, and I wish they would grade, but we seem, our food production in New Zealand, we sell it based on the fact that it's from New Zealand, and that's enough.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's all exported, isn't it? 'Cause,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, it's all-
the
all
world
goes
wants
overseas.
grass finished, organic,
Grass-fed beef and lamb.
So, I mean, it's almost like the opposite from America, really. I mean, you want a boutique product, you get like a grass-fed product, and you sort of want a boutique product in New Zealand and Australia, and you end up with a grain finished
wow.
product. So
It's
almost reversed, because
It
we've
is.
got so much.
It's weird.
We've got more grass, obviously, in Australia and New Zealand and that.
Yeah.
And the world wants that, but we sort of want, if you want a good quality
want
beef,
grain
you want it grain finished.
So
And when we're, to answer your question, Brendan, when we're talking about grain finishing, what we're talking about is that a muscle on a cow, for example, is made up of muscle fibre, water. It's got fat on it, and
Yes.
the old saying is "fat is flavour," which it's not actually true technically. Fat almost has no flavour, and if you don't believe me, just go and drink some olive oil or tallow or whatever. It's almost got no flavour at all. But what it does in the mouth is it almost I always think of it as it communicates, it transfers flavour from the whatever it's with, whether it's a vegetable or animal product. It communicates that flavour to your receptors.
So it's like tofu, where tofu draws the flavour from whatever
Whatever
you
it
put
is,
it.
and it enhances it in terms
Yeah.
of your receptors.
Same thing, yeah.
So when we're talking about a good steak, we want fat on there, because then that allows our mouthfeel, our receptors to get the maximum transfer of flavour. And so there's two types of fat. There's intramuscular and I forget the two technical terms, but there's viscous fat and I forget the two names. Yeah, you can look it up. Yeah,
If you look it up, come on.
yeah. What is there's visceral and subcutaneous, visceral and subcutaneous fat.
What's connective? That's just the tissue, isn't it? Connective
Yeah,
tissue.
so what we're wanting is when they talk
Collagen
about
and stuff.
marbling, they're talking about the fat distribution among the muscle protein fibers themselves. And when you see it like a steak and you see, like, for example, a sirloin or a New York strip, as they call it, you have that fat that sits around the exterior of the meat, and that is I forget which one of those two terms it is. And then they have the intramuscular fat. I guess you'd call it the extramuscular fat, is that fat cap, like on a rump steak
Yep.
or a sirloin. And then you have the intramuscular fat, which is distributed through the muscle
Within the
fibers
muscle.
themselves. And that's where we get that marbling effect. And when they talk about marbling, they're talking about the stone marble that you would find on a piece of fine art or whatever. And it has that little bit of grey through the marble.
Actually, Mav, can you bring up that previous one that you had that we were looking at with the cap, that piece of ribeye? Pull that up again, because I think that shows exactly what you were talking about. So there you go. So
Yeah,
you-
so in the picture there, you've got 3-4 areas there of that extra, that fat on the outside of the muscle. And then on the inside of the muscle, where the red parts are, you see that intramuscular fat where it's distributed through the muscle meat. And that's what we're trying to get, because we're going to eat the mat. I mean, us Māori people will eat the fat too, don't get me wrong. I mean, we love the fat too. We'll eat that, especially if it's rendered. But the real flavour from the steak is getting communicated to your taste
by that,
buds by that fat. That's enhancing the mouthfeel and the flavour. So a higher quality steak will have lots of intramuscular fat distribution.
okay, so that's why Wagyu is sought after. So Mav, can you
Now, Wagyu's,
pull up a
for those
picture of
listening, Wagyu is a breed of cattle, so it means basically Japanese cow, and that's the translation. And it's genetically a higher quantity of intramuscular fat naturally in the genes. A lot of us in Australia and New Zealand, we eat Angus or Angus cross, and that has
There
typically
you go.
a
Pull
less
that up,
distribution.
mate. Pull that. We had that in Shinjuku at a restaurant about a week ago.
But that was amazing.
Oh, it was, and they gave us some nori sheets, lemon juice, a bit of spice, dip, wrap in the nori. It was absolutely
simple,
amazing. Oh, it was, and it just
That was over the hibachi too, wasn't it? So you
yeah, a little hibachi cooker. Yeah, unbelievable. And that particular restaurant we went on, they didn't have any English menus, but we saw the Wagyu set. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Japanese really have, I mean, the Wagyu that they have there, it's their thing, their genetics. And
So you say that's genetics. That's not
that's the breed of cattle that you're eating.
That's not taking a cow and making it fat and making its muscle. So it's
Yeah,
specific.
they do all that.
Yeah.
They
feed them
They
beer,
run a
eh?
feed program.
Yeah.
But when they talk about Wagyu, that's the breed. Like people might have heard of Hereford or Angus or whatever. Choose your breed.
But
Wagyu is a breed of cattle.
what I'm
that's
saying is
specific
that-
to Japan.
What I'm saying is that breed of cattle, Wagyu,
Yeah.
didn't start off 100 years ago or 200 years ago looking like that. Is that correct or not?
Well, I think I'm not quite sure the origins of it, but what I do know about it is it originates from Japan, and the Japanese have selectively bred it to be, as they've eaten it and raised it, and they've selectively bred the most intramuscularly marbled
Do we know
animals that have come out of that gene pool.
Do we know when Wagyu hit the main stage, Mav?
Well, what I do
Mav?
I do know a little bit, and you might have to fact check this, but what my understanding of Wagyu in Australia is that it is specific to Japan. It is a Japanese, genetically originates from Japan, and I think what happened was that I want to say the early 90s, I want to say like 93, 94, I might
Here
be
we
wrong.
go.
Yeah, there you go.
76. Oh, that was America.
Go back, mate.
Okay,
Go back.
so the first Wagyu embryos were brought into Australia, I believe, in the early 90s. There were two embryos brought in. It's all strictly controlled out of Japan, or has been. And of course, once they let the cat out of the bag, they sort of have lost some control of their genetics. There were four animals that went to the US, and the guys at Snake River Farms in Idaho there, which is a famous, very well, highly regarded Wagyu brand out of the US, probably the creme de la creme of beef out of the US. Yeah, so you see the four bulls, two of them went to Idaho in 1976. And they, so there are very few genetically pure Wagyu cows outside of Japan, but there are, I think, from my recollection, there's like a half a dozen, three, maybe four brands in Australia.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of like Jack Creek, Sure, where they have full blood,
Yeah.
genetically full blood.
Oh, Mav, go back to that. There was an interesting point there. So the two black bulls were named. So
during
so there goes
That's
four
funny.
Wagyu bulls, full blood black bulls, and two full blood red bulls came in from Japan, 1976. The two black bulls were named Mazda and Mount Fuji. The two red bulls were named Judo and Rushaw.
Yeah, so as they bred them, so this is, I mean, they must have paid mega to get them out of they would have had to been certified by Japanese government for export and all that. But anyway, literally all of the international Wagyu has come out of those couple of embryos that were live exported. The Americans, I think they identify, I want to say it's less than 5 ranches that run full-blood Wagyu genetics.
Yeah.
And I want to say it's an incredibly low number here in in Australia as well.
Because
Maybe
you mentioned Sure, didn't you, over here?
yeah, Sure is one of them. I know
Yeah.
that, and
I've
I think maybe I'm wrong about Jack's Creek, but Sure is definitely one of them.
Yep.
And they're genetically full blood product. Now, I mean, that's just. I'm not saying that that's the best. I'm just saying that that's the pinnacle of Wagyu. There are some phenomenal Angus brands over here.
Yeah.
There are some phenomenal crossbred where they'll take Angus cow and inseminate it with Wagyu or vice versa. I don't know that you would inseminate a Wagyu cow with Angus, but they do the other way.
Yep.
And our First Light Foods out of Brendan's hometown,
Well, yeah,
they
sort of
do
more Ashburton.
they do a similar program where they're doing a crossbred Wagyu product. But I think people have found Wagyu to be overrated, and I think that that's because they either don't know anything about it or it's one of these watered down genetic marketing only type products. It is definitely the pinnacle of intramuscular fat in terms of beef. We cook it at competitions, but I only cook it at competitions. I'd never cook it for my family unless I really had a piece that I wanted to get rid of.
I only cook that for my family.
But you're doing steaks, right?
No. We're talking.
You do briskets,
I'm
or-
talking about shear. So,
yeah.
So the shear Wagyu point ends that we buy from Matt's Meats just down the road here.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Online, arrives 2 days later. As I said, with me, with what I know about barbecuing and what I know about my history and my business is good in, good out.
Yeah.
So you set yourself up for success, get a good piece of meat, and the end result's going to be fantastic.
Sure. I mean, if you're going to be spending, a couple of hours, doing something, you can either have a shitty bit of meat or buy a decent bit of meat,
Yeah.
and make a fantastic meal about it. Get some friends around,
Exactly.
it's all that process,
That's what it's all about.
Starting the
as you
charcoal, getting smoke everywhere, know,
Yep.
getting it all through the washing,
I guess I would say that I wouldn't let
pissing
it.
the neighbours off.
I wouldn't let it be an impediment to me getting going. But you're
Yeah.
going to have limited. I'd rather someone cook a cheaper Angus. There's really nothing wrong with Angus beef, and I'd feed it to my family on any day of the week. But if you're really passionate about barbecuing, you want the best, then you would be hard pressed
Yeah.
to find a better product than a Sure Wagyu or whatever. Choose your brand. Like I said, Australia's got such good beef production, amazing beef production.
Well, you take it for granted, the quality of products that we do have. I mean, people do whinge and moan about the cost of living over here, but we're doing all right. We've got nothing to complain about because, as you say, you can
You're
get
the lucky country.
you can get. Well, I mean, hey, you guys.
We're blessed.
I mean, us
Natural raw
as Kiwis. As Kiwis, I mean, we do it really well in relation to world standards, and a lot of people look at Kiwis like us and go, "You're the lucky bastards."
Oh,
You
I don't
are.
know about that. Look, we're blessed beyond measure, but Australia is a amazing country from an economic point of view,
Well,
from
that's
a
only
cultural diversity point of view.
That's only because of you're talking about economic. That's only because of population.
No, not just that. You guys
No?
are. I mean, Australians are. Look at your mining industry. It's world leading. I mean, you watch Parker Schnobel come over from the Yukon, and he's blown away by what they're doing with gold mining on the west side of Australia.
Yeah.
I watch those touring videos of the guys that go in forward driving, and man, I'm like, this country, they call it doing a lap. I'm going to do a lap of Australia.
Yeah.
And I just think it's an amazing country. Yes, you have your 101 ways to die over here, but I think that the Australia offers some amazing opportunity. I think our outdoor lifestyle beats yours beats the Australians because of the non-poisonous element. Nothing in New Zealand wants to kill you except the natives, and I'm one of them. And but we don't have those venomous, deadly creatures all around us, and therefore I feel like we're a better outdoor. But I mean, the opportunity here with the population size, the mining, that sort of props up your economy. The demographics in Australia are pretty good. You've got a great. You're truly a land of opportunity.
But I mean, there's also the population too. I mean, it's just that economies of scale. I mean, you could set up a shop in the middle of nowhere and just on a busy road, and it's just you've got X amount of people going past that point
Exactly.
every day.
Yeah. Well, so my point
it almost
exactly.
can't fail.
My point exactly about the population. I mean,
And it's just getting bigger. I mean, especially Melbourne. Melbourne's been like the fastest growing
Yeah.
city end on
Yeah.
end for decades, isn't it?
But not taking away anything from NZ. I mean, obviously, I grew up in NZ. I've had businesses in NZ. I struggled for every dollar I earned in NZ. I had to fight.
Yeah, we know that game.
Exactly. The difference between NZ and here is that I don't have to fight the next dude because there's a lot more people wanting us to provide the service to them, and we can pick and choose. Now, I think that in business that's lucky, yes.
It's not well. When I refer to lucky country, obviously I'm referring to the mining.
No, I get.
You're living
but,
on a big gold mine, but
exactly.
but you've got a population that can sustain almost any harebrained idea that you have.
Yeah.
Whereas New Zealand,
exactly.
you really have to stay in
Stay in your lane.
commercially viable lanes, because if you go too fringe, that we don't have the population enough to specialise.
Yeah, but that's only by design. So you think about all the natural resources that New Zealand holds that are not being mined, are not being resourced. Right? New Zealand's sitting on a gold mine, but
absolutely.
it's never ever going to be tapped the way.
Because we've got those policies.
I think.
Well, so that's- that's my
because
point-
the
that's
average
my point
Kiwi
exactly.
values the environment over
Exactly.
the economic outcomes.
Exactly.
If
And
you want to be rich, you move to Australia. You don't try and be rich in New Zealand. We have the outdoor lifestyle. We have the natural beauty. That's what we offer. If you want to chase money, then you come over here to chase it. You start a scaffolding
I
business.
was going to
right
say, you
on.
try and, convert that into a,
specifically scaffolding or cranes
It's
or
apparently what we're good at over
painting
here.
or oh really?
Yeah, I admire. Look, scaffolding is not an easy business to work in. So, if our people over here have a reputation of doing scaffolding and hard labour, then good. I'm glad.
You've seen the scaffolding in China?
Yes, I have. Yep.
what was that Hong Kong tower that burnt down the other day? I was watching on the news. It had this bamboo scaffolding outside.
Mate,
That's
those guys are it's mad. It's madness.
But they've done studies on it, and bamboo for the weight, it's stronger and lighter, and they lash it together using rubber, so it's got some flex in it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It doesn't make any sense from the perspective of an engineer, but it makes sense in terms of people who are familiar with their resource that they have growing so abundantly. It's like a weed over there.
Exactly.
They eat it, they
Life's
turn
cheap.
it into chopsticks, they do everything with it. And life, yeah. Look,
So the good thing, I think the point we're trying to make is the good thing that NZ's holding on to its values as a little haven in this fucked up world that we're living in. You know, I've had friends that have relatives in Europe, and they've moved from Australia to New Zealand to just get that little bit further away from the world
craziness.
and all its craziness. I mean, you look at what's happening today with the sub deal that they're talking about, and Australia basically trying to cover its ass because it knows what China's thinking about and China's long game. And then as soon as we do something, China gets its back up and goes, "Oh, you're starting something that doesn't need to be started."
you're the only bastion of hope the West has in this area, right?
In the South Pacific, yeah.
yeah.
But China's population is declining big time. I mean, once this generation goes, China's. I mean, if we start putting the sanctions onto China as we do at Russia at the moment, they're going to be killing off hundreds of thousands of people because China relies on so many imports to survive, basically. So that's why China can't get involved in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. They never will, because if they get cut off, they'll just be losing people left, right, and centre.
Well, you look at the relationship between Australia and China. Are
we going down this road?
all our
I'm just
products.
saying
Don't get
we
me
might
fired
be-
up.
look,
Don't get me sparked up, Jared.
Look, what I can tell you is we're very blessed to have, like, Kiwis are very blessed with their natural environment and the opportunity to travel freely to Australia and work. We're very blessed to be able to do that.
We are very lucky.
And Australians are, I think equally as amazing and blessed and can come over to New Zealand to stay or to visit or to do whatever anytime. So we love Australian dollars in our economy, and we love the opportunity to come over here and do scaffolding. And it's like a quid pro quo.
Or barbecue.
Everybody wins. You guys grow amazing beef. We know how to cook it. And, and I suppose getting back to meat stock,
Well, I'll tell you what. We'll take a little bit of a break right now because I think we need a little bit of a reset.
well, wait on. Let's just finish up about meat stock, and then we can cut that.
Okay,
we can end that discussion.
We don't
'cause
have
I
to,
think for the
man. We
listener-
don't have. We're saving you an edit right now.
Yeah,
So if you want to finish off,
So meat stock is day one, big steak cook off where they do a lot of creative cooking, and Brendan's really a really amazing brain in this space, and there are many. They just had the world champs up in Fort Worth, Texas, and the Kiwis and Aussies just freaking we were overrepresented in terms of the outcomes because we have some amazing cooks here. Culturally, we're an amazing, pantry of ingredients, and we know our way around a barbecue. We've all, I mean, there's nothing more Australian than a barbecue, and Kiwis have been cooking on fire for since the start of the long white cloud. And so we did really well over there. We'll be doing that on Saturday at Meatstock, and then on Sunday we'll be cooking what you'd call the Texas barbecue, which I refer to that as the briskets and the pork butts and the ribs and the chicken. We'll be doing that, and we even throw lamb in on the Sunday. Ooh. And we'll be doing those cuts. And some teams do both. Some teams do SCA day one. Some teams do the NZBA or the ABA side, which is the low and slow. But we basically make a weekend of cooking barbecue and getting our food judged, and we hope to get. I think we get prize money. It costs us to enter, but we also get prize money. But the main thing is having the respect, admiration, the accomplishment of cooking against some really amazing teams here in Australia and New Zealand, and being able to go, wow, I just beat some of the most remarkable barbecuers in this region.
I mean, this is why I loved coming to Australia. I mean, Meatstock in particular, you sort of get those top 50 teams from around Australia. Guys I look up to, from day one, 2016 when I started, Lucas Armstrong, Trevor Dawson, Jai Healy, all those boys, I looked up to, and now they're, really good friends of mine. And
well, you're cooking against the best of the best, don't
exactly.
you?
This is, I just love that challenge, know. And coming, top 10 would be, a great achievement, because you look at all those, guys behind you that you look up to. So it's
I suppose as a competitor, Brendan, we want to, we do it for ourselves, for our own sense of accomplishment. And success is not measured in a trophy. Success isn't measured who you had to beat to get the trophy.
Yeah.
So, if I had to beat a bunch of bogans and I'd be like, outcook them in my sleep, that means nothing.
No. Yeah.
To cook against some of these guys who have cooked, internationally, I mean, a lot of these top tier Australian teams have cooked at the American Royal, which is the big world championships of barbecue. The Americans take it very seriously. And, we just want to measure ourselves, test ourselves against some other great cooks and see if we've got the stuff on the day.
And I mean, you've got, Dan Barrett, who, how many national champion, Australian national champion last year?
Yeah.
He won, 7, 8 competitions in a row, something like that? Something ridiculous.
I don't know if they're in a row, but he's very accomplished. I mean,
and he, cooked
he's
in
the
America
yardstick right now.
So
Dan Barrett from Big Smoke Barbecue is the guy that you'll
here in
measure
Melbourne,
yourself.
Melbourne based.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well,
we've got some American guys coming over too, haven't we? Got Sterling.
Yeah, Sterling and Sterling Smith from Luton Booty and
Michael from Sugarfire.
Yeah, from Sugarfire over there, Mike Johnson. Both really accomplished cooks, not just in the low and slow, but also in the World Food Champs, which they hold on the Food Network.
That, didn't he?
Sterling's, he's had a really good run the last sort of 18 months. He's just dominated, and a lot of people don't know who compete that Sterling's actually won lamb twice in Australia. And we have lamb as part of our categories this weekend. And anyone who thinks that, they can never win because they won't know how to cook lamb. He can cook lamb as good, if not better, than Australians and Kiwis. He's really mastered his craft as a barbecuer.
That's amazing. This podcast is brought to you by Holy Shirt Australia. Holy Shirt Australia are 100% online. They're Australia's largest no minimum custom print and embroidery company. All their services are completed in-house, and they can deliver all orders promptly and professionally. They like to keep it simple and straightforward, so they offer cool stuff that can be custom printed or embroidered to your liking. They have an easy-to-use online designer to build your custom apparel from the comfort of your home or office. They offer pricing that reflects your individual order, and remember, they are no minimum on all their products. They deliver what the customer expects when they expect it. They've got over 1,500 products ready for you to custom print or embroider today, right now. So head to holyshirt.com.au for all your custom clothing requirements.
Wherever you want it to be.
You guys comfortable now?
Yeah, that was a good little pit stop there. Thank you.
It's good to be back. Hey, look, we touched on the judging at Meatstock. What I'm intrigued, and probably what our viewers and listeners want to know, is what are the judges looking for specifically?
Well, the cool thing about barbecuing, competitive barbecuing, is literally anyone who wants to can become a judge. And that, what does that mean? It means they get to eat some amazing barbecue, but it also means that they, by compulsory, they have to do it's about an hour-long crash course in how to judge barbecue, and it's overseen and administrated by the ABA, Australasian Barbecue Alliance. I think their website's Oz Barbecue or something like that. And what they'll do is they'll teach you how to judge barbecue. And to sum it up, I suppose, they're looking for three things. And I believe these three things are at the heart of all good cuisine, whether it's a loon croissant, loon? What is it, loon?
That's the Melbourne one,
I had
isn't
one
it?
of those this morning.
Oh, really? Was it as good as they
You
said
know
it
what?
was?
It was 16, 14 $14, but I do not regret for a minute spending. It was an amazing
I've
croissant.
never heard of it. What's involved?
An
What is
amazing
it?
croissant. I'll take you there in the morning, mate. It's an amazing croissant.
It's
And
a
they
croissant
just-
place, and
Yeah.
the lady that owns it and runs it was like a space aeronautical
Oh, really?
engineer or something to do with that. And she's applied everything to a croissant.
What's it called? A loon?
It's called Loom or Loon. Can you Google
Yeah, I
that,
think it's
please, Mav?
loon. Loon, I think.
So what's so special about
She
this
makes
croissant?
croissants, and it's the most amazing bread product, pastry product that you've ever.
What's it got in it? Is it like
No,
ham cheese?
they've
Is
got
it just
options. They've
yeah.
got options,
filled with cream? or
but you
custard
can
or
just
something?
have a plain one, and it will blow your mind how good it is.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we'll go there in the morning
Okay, cool.
for a second round.
It's a date.
Anyway, so my point is that there are three things that all cooks, anyone who cooks anything, should always have in the back of their mind when they're cooking.
Number one.
Number one, presentation.
Yep.
How am I going to present the food? And if you're a home cook, think in reverse. You start with presentation because you're going to build your meal to look a certain way. Mm-hmm. You think about a pasta. I'm going to have a perfectly cooked al dente pasta. I'm going to have a sauce on it and a topping of, whatever. So you've got to think about how you're going to present it. And now I can work backwards. I'm going to start with my sauce. I'm going to cook my proteins. I'm going to cook my pasta last because that's got to be nice and al dente.
Yep.
And then I'm going to build it in reverse. I'm going to put my pasta and my sauce and my topping. So if you're at home, you're preparing a meal, whether it's a salad, always think in my head, how is this going to look when I present it to my family, the judges, my neighbours, whoever you're cooking for, my office, whatever, my customer. Second, texture or tenderness. We talked a lot about ribeyes and cooking to doneness. I don't care whether it's Wagyu, whether it's Angus, whatever it is. If it's not cooked medium rare, I'm not eating it.
So either way, so whether it's
I don't care what
underdone
the
or
protein
overdone,
is. If it's half raw, it's still mooing, I'm probably not eating it.
Yep.
And if it's overcooked, I'm sending it back. And whether you're my wife or whether you're in a restaurant, you're getting it back because I'm not
Wow.
eating it, right?
Who does the cooking at home, by the way?
We share. My wife's a great cook. So think about when you're cooking anything, whether it's a chicken breast for tacos, whether it's a steak, whatever it is, a boiled egg. If it isn't the right texture that it should be, doneness, if you give me a eggs Benedict with an overcooked egg, you're getting it back,
Wow.
right? Because an eggs Benny should always have a runny yolk.
Is a cafe or a restaurant's worst customer another chef?
No, well, I don't know. It's definitely not me because I don't tend to send food back at restaurants because I know how hard the hospitality industry have to work. But if it's within your control reasonably to do
Yeah.
a half-decent job, then that's what I expect.
Okay.
If you're just being lazy like my brother when he cooks, I'm not eating it because I'm not looking for that experience. So when you cook at home, think about doneness. Think about whether the egg needs 6 minutes to boil or whether it needs 5 minutes. I don't know.
That's the thing about having a couple of half dozen decent barbecue skills. I mean, every time you go out for dinner for a steak or something meaty to eat, you just get disappointed, especially the prices you're paying. So
Yeah.
I'd rather sort of buy some decent meat. And make a bit of an evening of it, get a nice bottle of wine, a couple of beers or something.
Yeah.
And especially if you've got a nice backyard or, go to the park or beach or whatever. And,
Well, that's with the value in
it's,
food and
yeah.
value in
But just
food,
the-
isn't it?
yeah.
It's the the
experience.
sharing it
The
with
experience,
with,
yeah,
the,
yeah, yeah,
with,
you're
the,
dead
with the
right.
friends and the family, the experience,
Yeah, for sure.
the journey of the meal, and who you take on that journey with you, and
Especially
who
if
shares it with you.
Yeah, especially if the kids can sort of help as well, and get the family involved. And
I mean, but how many times have you relived those memories and said, "Oh, I remember that whatever shellfish or whatever we ate. That was amazing, right?"
yeah, but it's
So
more-
food really does
Create
complement the
memories.
experience, right?
Well, yeah, isn't it?
Remember that time we went to the Formula One and Dave cooked those amazing insert whatever.
Yeah.
So food is really part of that because our senses are engaged: smell, taste, visually stimulating. So when you're cooking at home, focus on the correct doneness. We mentioned this overcooked chicken. Chicken needs to be cooked to about, I think it's 75 degrees to be safe to eat. So
Celsius?
cook it to 75. It doesn't need to be 92,
No.
dried out, inedible. It should be just 75, nice. And you could benefit a lot from just focusing. And then, of course, the last,
Number 3,
taste itself.
of course, most
And,
important.
and really taste comes back to having a balance. It comes back to having a balance of the taste profile. So is it sweet? Is it sour? Is it salty? Is it spicy? Is it acid like vinegar? So think about how to engage those different taste sensations into your cooking.
If we're talking about competition judging, say specifically for a brisket, we talked about profiles. What sort of profile are they looking for?
So profile, we're basically just talking about what flavours of taste that you put on it. So I mean, basically, when it comes down to beef, I mean, your sort of typical Texas sort of profile or taste, if you like, is like salt, pepper, maybe a bit of onion, garlic. So and when you sort of, there's so many rubs in that, you sort of go into Bunnings or your butcher store and all that. There's so many rubs, to choose from. It sort of gets a bit confusing. So I sort of always say to people that are just starting off, just start off with salt and pepper. Get a good quality, salt grinder, pepper grinder, and just start off with salt and pepper, and just slowly start putting some bit of onion powder.
Those are the basics.
Yeah, I mean that sort of stuff you can buy cheap as chips from Coles or any supermarkets and that. So start off with that and just go from there. I mean, some people might like a little bit more salty, some people might like a little bit more peppery, bit more onion, garlic. Just do it to suit yourself. There's no right or wrong.
Do you think people are overusing spices
Yeah,
and
for sure.
herbs?
Yeah, I mean, you sort of gotta let
balance.
the-
I mentioned the word balance. It's like, okay, it's okay to like something spicy, but I love my mother-in-law, but she loves garlic. What is it? Chicken seasoning, or what's that stuff we put on?
Lemon pepper? No, is it?
Is it chicken salt?
Chicken
and
salt.
it goes
Chicken
on
salt,
flaming
oh, yeah.
everything. Mixed herbs and chicken salt, and so you
Not that
can
aromat stuff. It's just
you-
all MSG, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you can if you're look, if you really fall in love with an ingredient, just be aware that might be something you love and maybe not everyone else loves it. So,
Well, so
always
that's the
try
thing.
to
If
find
you're
a balance.
cooking, for a group of people, you want a standard neutral flavor profile because you can always
It doesn't have
source
to
it.
be neutral, but it should.
Well, like a baseline.
Yeah. Well, I would say that the biggest crime I see against food is underseasoned.
Yeah.
And you can kind of understand, as I mentioned earlier, we run a couple of restaurants, and we season our food really well because we're barbecuers, and people are always talking about how good it tastes, and that's because we season it. In the restaurant trade, because of people's hypertension and all these plethora of health issues, we tend to leave the seasoning off because we wouldn't want to, that means that's one less customer, that maybe diabetes can't have the sugar and hypertension over there can't have the salt, and so we end up putting nothing on it. But I think it's a bit of a crime against the food itself because we've gone to all this effort to grow, raise, harvest, whatever the food, and then we don't bother seasoning it. And I think the biggest, tip number, what are we up to, 5? Tip number 5 for the listener is to actually season everything from your carrots right through to your steak to whatever. Use seasonings, and I'm not talking about I'm talking about simple things like salt, a flavour enhancer salt. It doesn't have to be complicated. For the guys at home wanting to have a go, use kosher salt, which is like a flaky salt. It doesn't have to be kosher salt. There's nothing remarkable about kosher salt or anything. It's just a nice flaky salt that spreads and hits the tongue in a certain way and saliva. Anyway, you can read a book on it.
Well, it's got the flat. It's got the flat
It's
flakes
flat
on it,
and
so
it
it's on
absorbs
your
into your
tongue.
saliva immediately.
Bang.
Sits on your tongue.
A nice coarse ground pepper, fresh ground pepper,
12
some
gauge.
garlic powder, to just some espresso powder and some maybe some ancho or chili powder, just a very small amount, and rub that into a steak and serve that up. And if you go, wow, that's really spicy, then you went too heavy on the chili powder, ancho powder, whatever. If it's too peppery, and just start to learn how to gauge things. If it's completely covered the protein or the ingredient, you've probably got too much of it on there.
Yeah. Well, you got to start. You got to start somewhere. So start at a baseline and then work yourself up or work yourself down. So we were talking about judging. Now, it's important from the judge's point of view or from the competitor's point of view, is that the judge is judging you on one bite. Is that correct?
One bite, yep. So it's pretty hard. It's about concentrating all those flavours into one bite. So they're not eating 3 ribs, they're not eating 4 ribs. It's not a meal. Out of that one rib with the bone in, they're taking one bite out of that rib. Out of that slice of brisket, they're taking one bite. Out of that chicken thigh, one bite.
Yep.
And so we've got some pork, so you might do multiple cuts of pork. You might do pulled. You might do some money muscle, some chunks, and different types of the pork shoulder. They're taking one bite of everything that you put in the box. So it's about concentrating flavour into that bite. So, I basically concentrate on making pork taste like pork, chicken taste like chicken, beef taste like beef.
So you say concentrate. Are you saying amplifying? Are you?
Yeah.
You still want it to taste like what it's supposed to taste like.
Yeah. So we will start on a Friday night by injecting it.
What?
So we'll
Injecting it? Are
Is
you
that
crazy?
Is that what you fellas do? Hey?
so-
Yeah,
so
you
we-
put all those hormones and what are you talking about?
Isn't that-
I wouldn't say
isn't
it's
that
hormones. Well, it's allowed. So we're pushing the boundaries, but it's all about amplifying that flavour, and we also put a phosphate type based flavouring compound into that. So
Well,
the
hold on a second.
phosphate-
Whoa, stop.
Whoa. Pump the
Stop.
brakes here.
Hold
Pump
on
the
a
brakes
sec.
here.
Back the fucking truck up. Phosphates.
Okay, so hold on. So there's various ways and have been used for a long time. If you think about something like bacon, that we all love and enjoy,
Who doesn't love bacon?
bacon is made by curing, and that process involves soaking the pork into a solution that adds saltiness and flavour and cures the pork.
Can I stop you for a second? I've got a fun fact. One of the oldest meats consumed is bacon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Preserving.
Chinese were known to preserve pork bellies around 1500 BCE.
Yeah.
Fun fact. Carry
Yeah,
on.
that's and so that process is we wouldn't have evolved to this stage in our evolution, where we are now prior to becoming cyborgs. But anyway,
well, yeah, we've got that to look
we're
forward
the
to,
age
haven't we?
of we're about to become cyborgs.
Oh, and I mean,
But anyway,
we're going to with the clean air policies and all that. So I mean, barbecuing's probably on the
on the down.
on the
but-
endangered list. So I mean, we might as well do it while we can.
Elon's going to save us all.
Yeah,
All right?
hopefully.
So don't worry.
yeah.
Elon's
Okay.
AIs, you don't have to worry about it. Anyway, back to barbecue.
So we've used these processes throughout human history, and I suppose in barbecue, what we've done is we've found an efficient way to make it happen in a very condensed time. And we weren't the ones who came up with the idea of injecting a solution of flavour into a meat product. This is done extensively through the meat industry when you're talking about hams and bacons and things like that. So what we're doing is we're taking some ingredients, which are a combination of flavours and a additive called phosphate, and I forget the actual chemical name for it. I want to say is it sodium phosphate? Anyway, you can read the side of an injection. And what we're looking to do is we're just looking to amplify the flavour profiles of the meat itself and to retain moisture.
That's what
That's
the
what
phosphate
That's number
does,
one.
yeah.
So I was
Yeah.
going to ask you exactly what does phosphate do?
So basically, it's a neutral flavour, and what it does, it basically, so when you've got meat and you don't freeze meat, the moisture particles in the meat are basically round. So when you freeze the meat, they burst those moisture molecules.
Yep.
So you can get more flavour into the meat by injecting with phosphates. So the phosphate is like an arrowhead. So the phosphates go in, and all the flavourings and the salt behind it, they all follow the phosphates.
Wow.
And so the phosphate molecules attach themselves to these burst molecules.
Yep.
And they all join hands inside the
So
meat,
it's like
basically.
an internal marbling of
Yeah,
flavour.
basically.
It's a way of
yeah.
getting
So if-
flavour
yeah.
deep inside.
So if you've got fresh meat, if you're injecting into fresh meat, you're basically wasting your time because you're only creating flavour on half the internal surface area of the meat. So when you freeze it, they burst, so then you're getting 100% coverage inside the meat. So you can also brine with fresh meat. So when you brine, you're basically adding a salty, flavourful solution.
You have to have salt in a brine because it's critical for that salt to pass through cellular level.
Can you explain to our
salt-
listeners how a brine works or what a
So
brine
basically
is?
the salt breaks down the protein molecules in the meat and it makes it more tender.
A brine's like a
But
bath. It's like
brining
a
also,
bath in it.
So it's
if you
like-
think of like a Trojan horse, the salt acts as that. It gets into the cellular, gets into the
Cellular
protein
structure of the
cell
meat, yeah.
and brings in whatever's inside it. You know, like the Trojan horse, it brings other flavours along for the ride, right? So what the short end of it is we're not injecting to preserve like bacon or cure. We're injecting to maximise the amount of flavour and texture that we're going to then later give to a judge. So it's nothing. I mean, there's a lot of talk.
It's not going to
around
hurt
it.
you.
It's rubbish.
And retain that moisture.
Yeah,
as you
yeah,
say,
because we're
yeah.
going to cook that meat for a long time, and part of cooking is to evaporate moisture from the product. That's what cooking is. That's why beef jerky is actually raw meat that has been dehydrated, right? They've cooked it by dehydration. We're cooking it using heat, and heat evaporates moisture, which we're trying to retain because it's a cooking contest. So we put a bit of flavour in there. We put some injection in there. We also season it with what they call a dry rub, which is a composition, again, of salt and other ingredients to enhance flavour. And thinking about your profile, you're thinking about garlic and celery seeds and mustard and coriander seeds and pepper. And, you know, there's all kinds of wacky
Sounds
flavours.
like a good gin, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
There's all
But
kinds of wacky flavours.
Yeah,
you
but
can
I mean,
use.
as a competitor, you're not looking to make anything stand out too much. I mean, as Jared mentioned before, it's all about that balance.
Yeah.
You just want that sweet, salty, acidic, umami flavours coming through. So you don't want you don't want it too spicy, because what if a judge doesn't like spice? What if a judge doesn't like it salty, doesn't like it peppery, you know? So you're trying to make the best average barbecue you can make,
the
basically.
most average barbecue that appeals to 6 people, the most.
Yeah. Well, you've
Basically.
got those other aspects about the texture
Yeah.
and the moisture
Preserve,
and
for
sure.
So and the presentation as well. So that all adds up to your 100 points or whatever
But
you want
the taste is triple weighted, so that's 3 times the
Value.
three times the
Of
score.
of course it
3
should
times
be.
the
Yeah,
Yeah,
value.
you can make a
for
turd
sure.
look good in a box,
Yeah.
but
Oh,
if it doesn't taste good, then
taste-
you ultimately failed as a cook, right?
It still tastes like a turd.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the-
you
one
can
of the
polish
keys-
a turd still a turd.
Yeah. One of the things we're always chasing is we're chasing that ultimate. You know, we can make something. You know, how many times have you eaten something like? I'm a sucker for a bakery. Bakers are amazingly talented people. You know, we talked about Loon. They can make flour look like it's gold leaf.
Yeah.
You know, make it look amazing. How many times have you bought a pastry product and it looks amazing and you eat it and it's crap? I know I've suffered from that because I'm a sucker for pastry. It's dry or it's whatever. What we're trying to do is make the food taste as good as it looks. We can make it look good. We can polish it and make it look great. But we want it to deliver in terms of flavour and texture as well. And I was talking to a friend of mine about this morning, that really barbecue is what we're going to turn in on Sunday. It all tastes very similar. It's all very well balanced. You're talking about the best cooks in Australia and New Zealand. It's all going to taste very similar. It becomes really about texture. Once you just hit a certain pinnacle in terms of not offending them with flavour, then we focus on the second element, as I explained earlier, and that's the texture. And the texture can vary wildly. People like fall off the bone ribs, but in barbecue, it's not supposed to fall off the right bone. If I pick up a rib and the meat slides off it, that tells me that they didn't know how to cook it because it's overcooked.
Whoa, hold on.
Yeah, that's right.
Whoa,
Yeah, you heard
whoa.
right. Yeah, you heard right.
Fucking newsflash.
Yeah, so when people post pictures of their, quote, fall off the bone ribs, I go, oh, that's amazing, you overcooked it. Because that's what you're telling me, is that you overcooked it.
So explain the overcooking.
Okay, so a perfect rib should bite clean off the bone.
But not fall off it.
Correct. But if you pick it up and it slides off the bone, it's overcooked.
So overcooking, we're talking about too long
Correct.
at a temperature.
Yeah, look, I can boil something and keep it moist.
Yeah.
It's not about dehydration at that point. It's
Yeah.
about the point where the meat is tender, but not more than that point.
So you can
And
you're telling me that meat can be more than tender. You said
it can be mush. I mean, we've all had mushy food before, right? That's where you've overcooked it.
That makes sense. But you don't think about that in a rib, though, do you? When that meat melts in your mouth, you go, "Fucking, I'm in heaven." But you've just told me.
Well, when
you've just blown my mind and
when
said
when you
that-
think about a rib, though, it should be a rib. It shouldn't be a pile of meat and a bone. That's like a stew, right? A stew has bones
Yep.
that are clean,
Yep.
where you can actually pick the bones out and they're white and clean and there's nothing on them.
Yep.
That's where you've basically cooked it to the point where it releases from the bone and
Wow.
turns into a mush. Stews are pretty much mush. What we're looking for with a rib is we're looking for a pork bone with meat from the ribs on it. So when I pick it up, it should look like a rib. That's what a rib is.
With a perfect bite mark out of it.
And I should be able to take a bite out of that, and it should be clean teeth marks out of the bone. It should just come clean off the bone, and that tells me that they cooked it perfectly.
You realise that a lot of the people that are going to be listening to this are going to be sending a lot of pork ribs back to the kitchen.
No, I wouldn't send them back. But look, if you
still taste
if
bloody
you've got to
good.
gnaw, some people like gnawing at it. And my dad was a hopeless cook as a kid and burnt everything, and you had to gnaw the food. But some people enjoy that experience. Like my mother-in-law still likes a well-done steak. Farmer, what do you expect?
Yeah.
My wife, when I married her 20 years ago, well done, because she grew up on a farm. I've slowly been bringing her back to medium rare. I've got her currently to medium.
Nice.
So I'm just I am literally 4 degrees away
gonna say you're 4
from
degrees
having her
away.
at, and the reason
And
why...
she's already got 2 degrees already.
the reason why we like that medium rare, for example, on a steak, just to fill it people in, is because that's the maximum tenderness, the maximum end user experience in terms of maximum flavour from the moistness of it, and the least amount of resistance when you go to bite it is at medium rare.
Yeah.
It's been scientifically proven on a chewing apparatus, and I guess with American barbecue, what
By
we're looking
Americans.
for, and people call, when you talk about brisket, it's a beef brisket, comes from the chest. Think of brisket as the chicken breast, beef breast it's chicken breast but on a beef animal, right?
Mav,
So it's
can
coming
you bring,
straight off the chest there.
can you bring up that,
So why
that
doesn't
a
a chicken
diagram?
breast have that same intramuscular fat as a brisket does then?
Can you bring up the diagram of
think
that
different-
cow so we
Because
can
it doesn't
see,
work as much?
see where the brisket is?
All right, sure.
Because I think Brendan just asked a question: why doesn't chicken breast have the same intramuscular?
Because it
I think
doesn't
two,
work as
because
much,
two different genetics. But a chicken stands up on its back feet and it has these wings that flap, and they don't really get used very much.
I'm just going to use
Whereas
this as a
a
demonstration.
cow-
Can I touch your breast?
Yeah.
I mean,
A
see, it's
cow-
not moving. Whereas if it was
A beef cow spends all day bending over, doing push-ups, chewing grass.
There
Right,
you go,
so it's a very
bring that up, mate. Bring that one there, yeah. Full screen that.
Yeah, so the front shoulder of a cow is called the chuck. Then there's the shank, which is basically what we'd call a leg, and then right on the chest, where it comes down from the big wide neck down to the chest, above the belly. Where your pectoral major is on a human, like where
This
a woman.
bit here.
Yeah. So it's not a breast on a cow because it's a male. So it's not like a chicken breast because it's a male
So do they
animal.
still get briskets off a girl cow?
Well, it's a steer actually because it's castrated. No, you typically girl cows. You milk them. We turn them into yogurt and cheese and all that. We don't. You don't typically eat dairy cows.
Well, they're actually worth more as they produce more.
dairy cow.
Yeah.
A dairy cow
economically.
than economically is what a
Dairy cows are fascinating animals. I've learned a lot about
Well.
dairy cows lately.
Okay, we'll
calf-
talk about that on the way home.
It's calving season in Hamilton at the moment.
Oh, well,
it's
there you go.
calving season.
Calving
okay.
season, yeah, lots of calves getting born.
So I think too, the home user wants to. You think about our profiles with brisket and all that. You wouldn't see like a spicy brisket. That's not a complementary flavour profile. We would tend to do.
Let your sauce do that.
Yeah, you could do that. You could use the sauce. There's various elements we talked about injecting, dry
you don't
rubbing.
want to over-saucing it, though, I mean. A lot
Well,
of good sauce on beef.
Look,
you know.
dude, I'm sorry, I'm a sauce guy. I love barbecue
really?
sauce.
Security.
I could just lather myself in it and lick it all off.
What's your favourite sauce?
The Baby Race.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, Baby Race,
He's one of
yeah,
those.
The spicy.
one of my-
I mean, a lot of competition, people put, sauce
know.
on their brisket. So,
Yeah, exactly.
And they've done really well with it.
But it's got to be complementary. It's got to be complementary.
So,
Look,
so
I-
I would say, if you had a salty, obviously you taste your food before you put it in the box, obviously.
Yeah.
So if your brisket did come out a bit salty, you'd want to put something sweet to balance it out.
Balance
So
it,
yeah.
it's all about tasting tasting it as you go too. So you can't just like cook something and automatically put it in the box.
In that instance, if something's come out and it's not to what you thought it was going to be,
you
think
gotta
fast.
change it.
You gotta think
you're gonna
fast,
glaze it. You're gonna glaze it with a bit of, and because
Win.
you said that
WIN, whatever it needs.
you said that specifically about thinking fast on your feet. Now you think low and slow. The competition's not low and slow; it's fast paced because
It's slow and slow cooking.
exactly.
So we're operating at lower temperatures, like what people. If you think about your convection oven at home, you're probably cooking between 165 C and maybe 180 for French fries or something. We're cooking down at 130, 140.
But now we were going to talk about this. Now we're talking hot and fast.
Well, that's So there's a lot of jargon
It's
in
another
barbecue.
podcast altogether.
Yeah, like any endeavour. I actually been talking to a friend about that this morning, and I think that there's
Who was this friend?
Adam.
Adam
I think
Roberts?
that there's no. Well, the viewer doesn't know who Adam is. I'm talking this for the viewer. I'll talk to you offline about that. But my point is that there's a lot of jargon. So let me just explain the terminology for the home user.
Yep.
So what are you going to do? Low and slow? And
So
hot and
we
fast?
do. American barbecue is characterised by cooking tough cuts of less desirable meat
Briskets.
for very long periods. And if you're in Texas, that's characterised by beef brisket and beef spare ribs, short ribs. And if you're in the East, Carolinas and so on, you're cooking pork shoulders, what we call pork butts, and that's a whole nother. It's a whole nother podcast,
Yep.
the name, but you can just search why a pork shoulder is called pork butts. And those are, again, tough cuts that were discarded, often fed to animals because they, like dogs and whatnot, because they were considered to be unedible, right? And, what they learned to do...
they were sold to the poor, weren't they? Because
correct.
they were
That's
cheap.
all they could afford.
And
That's all they could afford.
And this is how this style of cooking came about, because the poor people couldn't afford the good meat. So
the slaves were given all the shit meat from the
they basically
plantation owners,
did
weren't
it. They basically did a kiwi on it
wasn't there.
and got.
Well, neither was I, but I'm just making assumptions.
It's a number 8 wire fix, isn't it? for
Yeah,
the
you're
problem?
really talking about people who, and there's this phenomenon has been found all over the world where people who were in difficult circumstances managed to overcome the adversity of whatever their situation was, and we're talking obviously from a culinary perspective, but this is a story that's echoed through the human family right back to 13,000 BC, where people find themselves starving to death or whatever, and they learn to overcome the difficulty and adapt in our case, a cooking style to suit whatever they had available. And every culture has barbecued at some point. If you think about the people who live up in Europe, I'm thinking Swedish and Swiss and that, they're half freezing to death most of the year, so they had to learn how to adapt and overcome. And now you've got people following Wim Hof, freezing themselves in plunge pools to try and mimic that behaviour to try and build resilience,
Yeah,
right?
they just like drive whales up on the beach and kill them. So
Oh, I don't know about that. Look, I'm
Pickle
not gonna. That's a minefield to go there. But in terms of barbecue, yes, the slaves in America had less access to what we would call quality cuts, and so they learned to cook amazing cuisine using what they had available. And I suppose there's a lesson in that we've got some amazing products here in Australia, New Zealand, shellfish, seafood, beef, lamb, and you use, kangaroo, and you use what you have available, and you learn to master and cook it in amazing ways. So whether you're rich, poor, or in between, my advice to the viewer is to work with what you can afford to buy. And like my brother has 7 kids, so ribeye is not on the menu. When I cook for my family, we'll cook 6 steaks, 5 for us and my brother to come over and enjoy a steak every now and then.
But it's just about, getting the specials, whatever's on at the supermarket or the butcher or something too, It's sort of, specials on every week and that, just put something over charcoal, even just veggies,
Yeah, and just
a-
learning
and a
these principles
stainless-
that we're talking about.
Yeah, you can cook anything.
Man,
and
you'll
just make
bang
something
out.
taste amazing.
Well, hey, let's break it down then. Let's break it down for a listener or a viewer that hasn't done barbecuing or hasn't cooked over fire and wants to get into it. Where's the best place to start? What's the protein they use? how do we get these people into the door that we already know is here, and into a world that they're missing out on?
I think the cheapest way would be to get a Weber GA.
I don't know about
Something that small, do you think? You could feed.
I think that's too small to actually get any momentum. No, he's talking about a barbecue the size of a shoebox.
Yeah,
They are incredibly good small format barbecues, but I think just head down to your local big green barbecue store and find something that looks like it might interest you. Get yourself some charcoal or some briquettes, which make the job easier of not having to deal with firewood and open fire.
Yeah.
Like they tend to just generate heat. Get the thing going. Get it to our temperature, and you want to sort of work between 120 and 100 and let's say 200 degrees. Obviously, the lower temperature it is, the longer it will take. The higher temperature, the faster it will go, and that's where you get the terminology of low and slow and hot and fast.
I mean, there's plenty of advice out on the Facebook pages and that. So I mean, get on
there's
the old Facebook.
There's definitely
A plethora of information.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, don't be, backwards and coming forwards. I mean, there's no such thing as a stupid question. I mean, jump onto the Victorian Barbecue Alliance, Australasian
ABA
Barbecue
page,
Alliance,
you can come join the New Zealand Barbecue Alliance.
Just search up barbecue on Facebook and you'll find a local Facebook group.
Well, you guys as ambassadors for the industry are amazing. I've seen you on Facebook answering questions that you sort of go, oh, why didn't you know that? And you think about the amount of people out there that are afraid to cook or to go cooking down the route that you've gone down. You've got to start somewhere. But
It's a massive rabbit hole. So
as ambassadors, I mean, you guys are fantastic. I just see the patience and the time you spend with people, and there's always someone you going, hey, I'm new on this, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
I need some advice. And you guys or guys at the same level are always bouncing back information about just how to start off. I remember my first cook, I had Resi on speed dial, and I was using one of the red bullets that we bought from Bunnings.
Yeah, finito, yep.
I bought some beef ribs from a local butcher.
Wow, straight in the deep end.
I had everything. And as I said, I set myself up for success. I had the
I had the best
had the-
barbecuer in the
I had
region
the
on
pro-
speed dial. That's how I was successful.
That's how. Look, I am white and privileged. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. And I had the probes, obviously the temperature probes, one for the meat, one for the barbie, and it was an inclement Melbourne day, a bit of rain, bit of hot and cold. It was all over the place, and I remember just sitting on the couch, looking out the window of the balcony and watching my smoker smoke, going, it's pretty fucking cool.
that's cool.
And I'm looking at the temperature gauge, and it's going up and it's going down, and it's going up and it's going down. And I remember going in and out and adjusting the dials on the finito on the top and the bottom.
you're wasting your time.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is you want to be engaged. People mess with it because they want to feel like they're doing something, but part of the art of it is to know when to just let it go.
Yeah, I mean, it's only barbecue. You're not sort of, saving lives or.
No, well, you're not trying to launch a rocket.
only-
Although
exactly.
it looks like a rocket, you're not trying to put it into space.
Yeah, it's not
And that
rocket
was
surgery.
No, and as I said, for me personally, it was a journey. It was a massive wave I was riding, and in the end, what are we talking? 5-6 hours later. Probably about 8 or 10 beers. And look, I'm sure it tasted fantastic. It was probably not up to my high standards. But that whole journey of taking that first piece of meat and creating fire and cooking it and watching it and nurturing it like a newborn child was just amazing. Well, yeah, exactly. It was
beautiful
amazing.
analogy.
Isn't it?
Yeah,
Did it taste good, Matt?
I think
Did you have some of it? Or you didn't know?
I think my advice would be, look, this is an amazing way to cook that is far better than your electric, induction, or gas appliance at home.
Well, we talked about the other day, the flavour and the taste from cooking over fire and charcoals, once you've experienced it, you will not go back.
Yeah.
No.
You will not go from a gas barbecue to coal and charcoal or wood and fire, you will not. If once you go this way, you never go back.
Yeah, but saying that too, I mean, I sort of got into barbecue when our gas barbecue was on the way out. So I think I'd sort of come across the NZ Barbecue Alliance page, and I started mucking around with those little stainless steel smoker boxes you can get from, I don't know,
Hardware store.
Bunnings, an orange one in New Zealand. But just putting wood chips in it and just putting that on the gas burner and just getting the
Aromatics,
idea and the sensation of just having smoke on your meat. It was a completely foreign idea to me, and we just started developing it from there. And then we started putting some briquettes on it and just making it last a little bit longer. And I think we just end up getting a cheap offset smoker off a marketplace type internet thing. And then I thought, well, there must be some sort of New Zealand company that makes these products, and then came across Jared and
He was the guy.
ended up hassling him.
was the
So
go-to guy.
yeah, I think I just
And the
pestered
rest-
you until you
Been doing this a
sold me
long time.
something.
And the rest is history. Hey,
The
look,
rest is history.
can I stop you guys there? And I want to understand how smoke works. Explain to our listeners the process within a smoker. How does it work? How does it cook the meat?
Well, smoke doesn't cook the meat. Smoke is a byproduct of burning solid fuel. Again, we're referring to firewood, briquettes, or pellets, or whatever. And it's really when you burn any, when you're burning wood, you're burning cellulose and lignin, and those particles turn into hot air and smoke.
Yep.
And the moisture in the product you're cooking, again, this could be a watermelon, it could be a slab of meat, they are attracted to that moisture, the particles in the actual smoke stream. So you're burning fuel for heat to cook the meat.
Yep. So the heat's cooking the meat.
Correct. And the smoke is riding that heat wave as a product of burning that solid fuel, and is being attracted to the moisture on the product you're cooking, i.e. the steak, and it clings to that moisture and then gets basically attached to the outside of that product. And that has a flavour to it. And depending on the type of wood you're burning, solid fuel you're burning, it can be a really powerful, strong flavour, like something like we would use
Applewood?
If you're in America, you'd be talking mesquite. If you're in New Zealand, you'd be talking manuka.
Or if you're in Hamilton, you'd be talking oak. If you're in Hawke's Bay, you'd be talking apple. It's just whatever.
So
wood
whatever,
is prominent to your region.
so they have different taste profiles, smells, etc., based on what you're burning. And if you cook enough with it, you can actually go, oh, I see old Jimmy across the road's burning oak wood in his fireplace tonight,
Yep.
or gum. You can smell gum. You can have properties of that wood. You can smell it as you get more familiar with it. So some of that taste, and when we talk about taste, actually most of what we taste is actually smell. Our nose plays a really fundamental role in taste. So when we say we taste, if you think about anything that you enjoy eating, usually you'll smell it first. That's part of the sensual engagement when you eat.
Yep.
And when you're cooking and hearing that meat drip and sizzle, you're smelling it and engaging with that smell. And that fire is emitting that particulate, and that particulate is clinging to some of it to the surface of that meat.
And that's what gives us that smoke ring, isn't it? So when you look at smoked meat,
I think it's the nitrogen in the firewood that actually creates that chemical reaction called the Maillard reaction. You can look that up, and it's the discoloration where the nitrogen, I believe it's nitrogen if my memory serves me well, reacts with the protein and discolors it. And that's a sign usually that it's been smoked. Not always, but usually it'll have let's say a 2 mil to 3 mil ring around the product that will be a light pink colour, almost like a lipstick colour,
Hey,
like
Mav,
a pink lipstick
can you-
colour around it.
can you bring us up a brisket smoke ring?
Yeah, search smoke ring up there, Jamie. And sorry, Mav.
But I mean, you can actually create a smoke ring in an oven. It's just that reaction on the outside between the moisture and the,
Oh,
and
really?
the heat. It doesn't actually require smoke to
Okay.
generate it.
You can fake a smoke ring with nitrate enriched
Yeah.
solder.
Give me that.
So you can see there.
There you go. Bring that one up, mate.
So if you have a look there for the home user, you've got that bright pink discoloration around the outside of the brisket. That's The black colour there is what we refer to as the bark. That's a reaction of the moisture evaporating and the ingredients like pepper and that reacting and the smoke sticking and blah,
Oh,
blah,
that's
blah.
a big one. Look at that big ring.
And then you've got, that's a really deep ring. And to get that, you can use salts or you can freeze, if you cook it colder to start with, it'll absorb more nitrogen.
Well, the moisture condensates.
If you want to read about it, it's called the Maillard reaction. It's usually an indicator that something's been cooked over firewood. Not always, but it can be.
It's quite funny. You sort of see, some new people that have gone to a barbecue restaurant, and especially that picture on the right-hand side there. On the outside, it looks burned, but on the inside, it looks raw.
Yeah.
And just not understanding that.
I've had
how
so many
the process
people
works.
tell me my ribs
Yeah.
are raw because they're pink.
They do
Yeah,
the same
yeah.
with chicken, isn't it? Because
Chicken,
when you
yeah,
smoke
yeah.
chicken,
Well, we run our restaurant, Texas Pete's Barbecue, back in New Zealand, and I've had so many people complain about chicken being pink from the Maillard reaction that we've actually stopped smoking chicken altogether. We
really?
we only do fried chicken because I'm sick of sort of the Facebook reviewer, food critic, the Facebook food critic, who wants to tell us that our chicken that is literally falling off the bone is still raw.
I mean, the last thing you want as a restaurant is to have that reputation as a raw chicken.
Have that battle every week with
People are
people who are
dicks,
ignorant.
aren't they?
But it's all right. I mean,
Well,
that
you
is
don't
what
know.
it is.
You don't know if you don't know. It's all about a bit of education. And I mean, in some barbecue restaurants I've been into, there's actually been just been the sign there. If our chicken looks red, it's actually from the smoke. Not
we look at fancy Hanks. I think that's on their menu. There.
Yeah.
It
I mean,
specifically
You have to.
states it.
I mean, it's a ball
Yeah.
ache.
Yeah.
So smoke. So that's how we get the taste of the smoke into it. It's actually sitting on the surface, and you'll see us spraying our meat as we cook it. And what we're doing,
Spritzing.
we call it spritzing.
Spritzing.
That's usually anything from water to beer to Coke to apple cider to pick a product. And what we're doing is we're trying to slow down the cooking of the exterior, because obviously when you're cooking a product like a big brisket, the heat is driving in from the exterior towards the center, and we want the brisket to cook in even fashion. And so what we try to do is cool the exterior of it so that the heat has longer to drive through the center, so we don't have it sort of burnt on the outside and raw on the inside. We want it to cook nice and in a homogeneous way. And the other thing that spritzing does is it helps that smoke particulate to adhere or stick to the outside of the name your protein.
Yeah.
So if you're cooking something like quite firm, you can cook anything in a barbecue. That's a Big Willie quote, Big Willie Wilcox, Mike Wilcox. You can cook anything in a barbecue. Sometimes for drier products, you'll have to moisten them a little bit to try and get the flavour to sort of sink in. We don't typically refer to cooking in our barbecues. We call it barbecuing, not smoking, because if you can see the smoke, then typically it's going to taste like an ashtray. What we're looking for when we cook in a barbecue is a very thin, blue, pale smoke. If you can see smoke billowing out, then it's going to be crap. So it's a sure sign of a good barbecue that they're running a really clean, pale blue smoke.
But if you see me barbecuing, what I do is I have my grate high above the coals. I don't have any.
Yeah,
Any.
Yeah.
I'm going to go.
Yeah, go.
Right. So I cook directly over the coals. So I've got like a hot bed of coals down the bottom.
Yep.
And I've got the grate up
Is
the
this a
top.
bone of contention between
No,
you
not
two?
at all.
No.
It's just
We're going down this road.
sometimes you go and you can become too complicated for people who are starting out. But I think we have a wide range of listeners here who are. What I'll tell you before. Let me preface this.
Let's not diminish the.
Brendan is a pie. Look, there's slow and slow cooking, and I mentioned we cook at these lower temperatures using firewood burners, and then there's hot and fast cooking, which is basically taking these primal cuts that should be cooked at really low temperatures and cooking them at high temperatures. When we say high, we'd like traditional baking temperatures of 180 degrees. So, and Brendan,
Or higher.
Yeah, so we don't call that low and slow anymore because it's not in the 130 range or 240, 250 if you're a Fahrenheit guy. We're cooking up in the 300 to 350 range, which is traditionally for those at home would be roasting, roasting temperature, right?
Like Mum used to do.
175, 180 degrees in your oven is roasting, right? So what we're doing on the barbecue is we're cooking in some of those more higher temperatures for like oven cooking, and we refer to that as hot and fast. And this was really a style of barbecuing that was pioneered by a team out of the US called it's Tim Scher from Shake and Bake Barbecue and Brad Leininger from Getting Basted. They're sort of like pioneers of this sort of higher temperature cooking of these low and slow cuts. And, you know, it's kind of a recent phenomenon, probably in the last 5 years. And you think about how long they've been barbecuing in America. It is like a recent revolution. I call it the hot and fast revolution. And Brendan has, to my admiration, he's sort of like taken that and run with it and created. And I've been talking, I was over in Texas last week talking to them, and they're still very much about low and slow, and explaining to them some of the principles of what I have observed in the hot and fast space. And I really think that Brendan's a pioneer of taking what Tim and Brad are doing and really even going to the next level with it. And so with that preface, I would like you to now explain how you're doing this hot and fast direct cooking.
Well, I mean, especially since you came back from, Houston last week, and we were sort of, chatting about it pretty much every day. The low and slow, how they were doing it at Texas, the World...
Yeah, Houston Livestock Show, HLRS, yeah.
So they're cooking low and slow on offset smokers. So you've got like a chamber that your meat's in, and then you've got another chamber to the side where you put the wood in. And
you're thinking like Fancy Hank's type of barbecue with the big
typical
big
American sort of style restaurant. And so what we've been doing, I mean, we'll probably get into this a bit sort of soonish too. Jared's got like a barbecue company, Octopit, and they've been making a barbecue the last sort of, a few years, since about 2020, a multi-Q, which is basically like a direct style cooker. So you've got your firebox down the bottom that you put your charcoal in, you light that, and then above that you've got like another, what they call a deflector. So so the meat is protected by a steel plate basically, and then above that you've got a grate that you've got the meat on. So you've got the fire down the bottom, and there's only one way for that heat to go, and that's straight up. So it's just science. So what I've sort of thought about, and we've played around with some drums and even the char griller acorn, taking the deflector out of a char griller acorn and just going direct. So we're still working at about 350 Fahrenheit, 400 Fahrenheit, which is about 200.
About 200
Celsius. And what I'm wanting to achieve is to get that fat to melt quicker, and to get that fat and the moisture to drip onto those coals, and that creates like a vaporization process. Jared mentioned about spritzing before. So I'm using the fat and the moisture of the meat that hits the coals, creates more moisture, and comes back up and self-bastes that meat.
So that moisture's coming back up as steam.
Yeah,
because you're dripping water effectively.
Yeah.
I mean, some of it's fat, but even if you take fat and you liquefy it, it's got water through it.
Yeah.
So that process starts to happen after about half an hour. So if you come past my site, it's like,
billowing.
It's billowing, but it's
Steam.
actually steam.
Steam.
It's not smoke.
Yeah.
It's some fat. Look, I'll be honest, because I've been. We tend to overthink these things in case the listener can't tell. But I've been just perplexed as I've watched Brendan develop this process, and in so many ways, I think that can't possibly work. But I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I've eaten a lot of brisket and products from the best barbecuers in the business. And Brendan is like at the top of that list in terms of texture for brisket is amazing.
The biggest compliment I ever had, I was at a comp brisket up in Pie here, which is way up the top of the North Island, and Jared came back for 3 slices of that brisket.
Oh,
and that's
wow.
probably one of the biggest compliments. Usually I'm just like getting them.
Can't give it away.
usually because we're in a bit of a rush, so if I want something tasted, I'll like get it in my glove, and I'll just jam it into somebody's mouth and say, taste this, see what it tastes like. So I'm not shy and just like saying, taste this, whoever's around, because I honestly want their opinion, because usually they've got hands in chicken, and they don't want to I don't want to be nice about it, and I'll try this, and I'll just jam something into somebody's face and try this. But yeah, I mean, there's a fine line between vaporization and carbonization. So
Yeah. And I think
a very, very fine line. So you've just got to be.
Yeah, as I've tried to unpack it, one of the big things that's of benefit to the way he's explaining this is there's quite a significant gap between the charcoal itself and the product of the grill. Yeah. We're probably talking in 600, even maybe 800 millimeters. So we're talking, say, 3/4 of a meter.
Yeah, it's not
to
all
just
flames
fully
and shit.
mix the metric system up with Imperial, and so it's way up here, and your coals are way down there. But he's got such a big coal bed going.
Yep.
And we're talking probably 7-8 kilos of coals going.
Yep.
So it's a damn furnace in there, but he's got his brisket way up top, and it's a process I've never seen anywhere else in the world.
And I mean that charcoal's all ashed over, so it's not dirty charcoal. It's not like unburnt charcoal that's catching fire. It has actually ashed over.
It's gone through
so it's gone hot,
red hot,
and then it's come
back
back down again. So, and I mean we do drop it back. So I mean we're probably cooking like 350, 400 Fahrenheit. And then once it's got the
texture
crust and the bark's set, it gets wrapped. So that's only about an hour process.
Okay, so if you're talking about 350 Fahrenheit, are we talking about at the bottom or at the top?
No, at the top, at the gauge.
So where the meat's been cooked, that's where we take our temperature gauge.
Yeah, because it would be 500 down bottom. I mean, you lose a lot of thermal momentum.
Yeah. So that was my question. Is like, where
but
is it?
You can achieve. Well, you can't really achieve that in anything else apart from a direct cooker.
Look, yeah, and that's why you'll see. I mean, when barbecue phenomenon first hit Australia and New Zealand, everybody wanted these sort of Texas chamber things that, like Fancy Hanks. If you haven't been, hit up Fancy Hanks. He's a great guy. Mike Patrick does a great job.
Yeah, he's a legend.
And there's many. I mean, Melbourne, you're spoilt in the food cuisine thing. There's almost I almost want to say there's nowhere else like Melbourne. It's just you're spoilt for choice.
You've got Blue Bonnet, Houston's.
Yeah. Anyways, so everybody in our scene now is sort of going to these more mobile, more efficient, less time-consuming barbecues. Where we don't have to bring firewood, we don't have to sort of feed sticks into the back of the firebox, burning it It's a very manual process to control.
I mean, why spend 12 hours smoking a brisket when you can do it in 3.5, 4 hours?
Well, my point exactly.
Most people are time poor these days.
Well, and while we're there too, obviously we want to give your company a bit of a plug, MultiQ.
Well, it's Octopit is our brand of barbecue. We've been making offsets since about 2016, 17, somewhere in there. We've been making barbecues, We started out making offsets because no one in New Zealand was making them, and we made a really good offset. Brendan, I think he bought the very first one, didn't you?
I think I got the second one. It was a
prototype.
Prototype one,
So, that's right. And then we kind of met each other. I thought I'd never see the guy again, but we've become really good close mates and friends, and we probably talk most weeks or most days. There's definitely some bromance.
Jesus.
Yeah, when I see Jared McDonald come up on my phone, I've got to have half an hour. So at least half an hour.
You've got to walk out of the door away from what's going on.
Don't ever answer my call if you're at work. Well, usually I'm driving to school and he's driving to work, but
yeah.
So we've sort of. We make barbecues in New Zealand, and we have sent some over here. There's a few of them over here. There's a few of them going to be at Melbourne.
I've got two now. Yeah,
going to be a couple of them at Melbourne Meat Stock. But my point is that we've sort of seen I guess because I'm balls deep into barbecue, we saw the hot and fast revolution coming, and we wanted to get ahead of it. And I had been sort of like musing about a product to make a direct cooker for probably about 1.5 years to make a really good direct cooker. And when I mean direct, we're talking about cooking directly over the coals or somewhere above the coals as opposed to offset.
Yeah.
And we sort of worked with a CAD engineer Jacinda Ardern, our Prime Minister, who I love dearly. She and that's sarcasm, by the way. She locked us down.
Vale, Jacinda.
Yeah, we run her out of town, but she's in 2020 she locked us down for 3 weeks. 3 weeks.
Oh,
yeah.
Dude, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Fucking stop your whining.
Okay,
mate.
so
Stop,
for me,
try
and
3
I
months.
know you guys had it tough.
One.
Jesus Christ.
But anyway, look, let me finish the story. Steady on. So I'm a busy relaxer, and of course I'm told I can't go to work and can't leave the house. So for the first week I just slept all day, and my wife thought I was unwell or had COVID or whatever. I was just being sloth.
He's just bored.
And then I had a go at video games, and then that wasn't enough to engage me. And then I had a go at being a school teacher, and I was quickly found that I had no patience.
Hang on a minute. I'd sent some drums up to you beforehand.
Yeah, but that's good. Yeah, anyway, that's a long story. Again, I'd been musing about this barbecue for a couple of years, like 18 months. And then the last week of lockdown, I sat down with literally a jotter pad and started to develop an idea. And the idea was to make a single incredibly well-built barbecue. And anyone who owns an Octo Pit would not be able to disagree with that besides the wheels, but that's outsourced. And we wanted a barbecue, and Lord of the Rings fan, because it's made in New Zealand. I wanted one barbecue to rule them all.
Wow.
That's sort of the mission statement.
And I think you've done that, haven't you?
One barbecue to rule them all. And so we set out, I set out for a week. I just scribbled designs and took measurements and thought and called Brendan and called Matt. And we talked it around in circles. I even talked to some of the guys over here in Australia about what would work, and, sort of drew on all of our collective experience to try and come up with a idea that would serve, that would meet the goal of one barbecue to rule them all. And then the first week we got unlocked, I went down to our profile cutter and sat down with him and explained the concept. And it took him a little while to get his head around it. And after several months of product development and cutting and welding and refabricating and redrawing and remeasuring, we made our first, what we call now the multi-Q. And we call it the multi-Q because it's multiple barbecue, one barbecue to rule them all. And we make those in New Zealand, in Hamilton. We make milk and barbecues in Hamilton. And I think now we've been very successful with that product. I think we have achieved our goal. I think it's an excellent barbecue by any metric.
I just want to go back a little bit there, because when you were first starting to send those initial sketches through, there was you, me, and Matt Flanagan, mile marker 66.
Yeah.
And it's the only time all
We've
three
all
of us
agreed.
we've all agreed on something. And everything.
Well, great
we put
minds,
in,
isn't
He's
it?
trying to claim
and
it,
it was
right?
like bang, bang, bang. Of course, I'm trying to
great
claim
minds.
it.
Yeah. No, but the boy, in marketing, you learn about designing a product that is a user product, or push and pull marketing, they call it, or push and pull product development. So it's very much a user experience orientated design. We built it using state of the art tech in terms of CAD CAM folding, cutting, laser cutting, all of it. We drew. The guy who did the CAD work for us has been drawing for 30 years. We did revision after revision after revision. I think it must have been September 2020 we delivered the first 3 multi-Qs, and one was mine, one was Matt's, and one was Brendan's, because we were the pioneers of the design. And we've sold about 100 of them, or just over 100. You kind of lose track, which may not sound like a lot, but in the pinnacle of barbecue, there's only, like in New Zealand, there'd be 100 teams.
Yeah.
Now in New Zealand, so we did the 2020 season. We delivered the first one, I think, in September. And then we had all of 21 on with the multi-Q in production. And I think of the top 10 teams in the country, probably 7 or 8 of them are on multi-Qs.
So that first year of 2020 with the multi-Q, that ended up winning a national championship on that multi-Q.
Yeah,
I
correct.
forget who it was, but yeah, it was. Yeah.
And
Who was it? Was it you or who?
No, it was Brendan. Brendan won the
You got
national
2021,
champion.
didn't you? Yeah.
Not Mulmucker. Matt and Tracy Belville won 21, and then we won 22. And it was and really there was one point at the competition where me and my business partners sat down to say, how successful is the multi-Q done? And we looked up the results for the last 6 or 7 contests, and we're running about a comp a month over there. And every category, top 3 of every contest had been won on a multi-Q.
It's amazing.
There was
That is
competition.
amazing.
There was one competition there where
Every
out of
category,
24 trophies, 17 went to
multi-Q owners.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so that was so I think that there'll be a lot of people going, well, that's interesting, whatever, but irrelevant. But I think in terms of, if you think of us as meat advocates, barbecue advocates, when we because we're so invested in this, we want the best gear that we can really
for sure. Why wouldn't you?
get onto, right? And like any endeavour, it's a Mont Blanc pen or whatever. I want the latest and greatest, and I think the multi-Q has now not only delivered on the promise, but it's also backed it up with the results. last season we cooked exclusively on 2 multi-Qs and we won the national championship. This weekend we've got three teams cooking on multi-Qs that have been sent over. We're very serious about this barbecue. I mean, the guys who are cooking in New Zealand. And I suspect if I was to forecast into the future, I think after this weekend we will see teams from Australia start to seriously look at the viability of owning a multi-Q. And we're working with Turn Left at Albuquerque, which is a brand new barbecue business down here in Melbourne. Geelong?
Geelong.
I'm not
Yeah,
too sure.
Geelong.
Is that
He's down there somewhere.
Glendunborough, wasn't it?
On the southeast
Cha-cha-cha.
coast, whatever. I don't know, Melbourne. But anyway, Turn Left at Albuquerque. He's got a brilliant store, and he's and I guess this is a world exclusive. He is going to be our agent for multi-Q in Australia for the next foreseeable future as we grow that business.
It's amazing.
So Australians will be able to contact Glenn and be able to go down and see the barbecue in action. They'll also be able to book to, and I'm not sure what our production schedule will look like, but they'll be able to buy a barbecue from Turn Left at Albuquerque, and we will get it over here to you. And
I know a place where we can do a good photo shoot.
yeah, well, we've got this amazing site here, and and
get
I'll
some of
probably
the-
take
get
you
some
up
of
on
the
that
photos,
offer
yeah.
at some point, Brendan, to have you twist your brother, our brother over here. I think it comes back to the Australian Kiwi attitude is when we get passionate about something, we really get behind it, and we are lateral thinkers. I go over to America and I look and they go, these barbecues all look the same. And what I've realised about Australia and New Zealand is we are innovators, we are deep thinkers.
Always have been.
Yeah,
Always have
and we
been.
come up with solutions that are unconventional,
Yep.
whereas the Americans tend to be tradition. I want it to look like my dad's barbecue.
Yep.
And they're very reluctant to step outside of those boundaries, whereas I think our culture is, hey, how can we, I don't care what it looks like as long as it works sort of thing. And, I think this is going to be, I'll make a prediction that I think in the next 5 years you'll see a few multi-Qs showing up getting trophies. I think really, these are really excellent barbecues. They're, they're probably outside of the price range of a starter, but we say don't start on our barbecue, but if you love barbecuing, you'll end on our barbecue.
Yeah.
So get out there, get down to the big green shed, find what you can afford, get some solid fuel, get a few tips off YouTube, and give it a crack. Because I think what you said, Brendan, once you give it a crack, you're really going to be hooked on it.
Exactly. Look, on that note,
Bombshell. On that bombshell.
exactly. I was going to say congratulations, but all the best for this weekend, for the coming weekend for Meatstock.
Thank you.
I hope you guys do well. I mean, you're
be
setting
there.
you're setting yourself up for success. And
Probably come last. Someone's going to come
Don't
last.
fuck anything up.
Yeah, it's tough.
Hey, look, once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time today. And I'm sure our listeners and our viewers have picked like at least one thing out of that.
Great.
Whether it be how to make a good steak or how to get into barbecuing.
Any questions, just look up More Better Barbecue on Instagram, Facebook.
Look, they
Hassle
can
Jared.
they can leave comments on our YouTube or whatever, and we'll pass them on to you guys. Facebook, More Better Barbecue, the Smoky Meat House, New Zealand Barbecue Alliance.
You've got a great barbecue scene here, right here in Australia.
Exactly.
And as much as I'd love to have you email me, you've got your local barbecue heroes.
I'd never give out your email address.
And I think that there's some amazing production happening here, and I look at this facility and I'm blown away by it. There's some amazing producers of content here in Australia that you can just YouTube up and learn how to cook almost about anything. Though I am yet to see a really good low and slow kangaroo method. And
Okay.
I have
Well-
tried kangaroo multiple times, but I haven't been impressed with it.
I'm sure somebody
At all.
right now.
I'd love to
working
see
on that.
someone really get a good, I don't know, a kangaroo brisket or something.
Thanks for having us.
On that note, Skippy, we're out of here. That's a wrap, Mav. Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in and for your time. You know the vibe, I'm I'm steady living until I die. It's a lewd state of mind, and we showed you that. Keep it authentic and real, I hope you coming back. Hey, make sure that you subscribe, cause we got it popping all the time, and it's going down. If you wanna elevate, wanna live a better life, keep it locked here. You know it's a lewd state of mind. Let's go.